Welcome to Matching You with Love, written by Julie L. Spencer and co-writer Audie Lynn Anderson. Narrated by Julie L. Spencer. Chapter 1. Taylor. Justifiable. Seriously, bro, hook me up. Kade punched my shoulder as if that would make me change my mind. Dude, she's my best friend. I punched him back. I wouldn't set you up with her if you were the last two humans on Earth. As I stepped down the front porch stairs of our modest home, I dreaded having to introduce my long-estranged twin brother to my next-door neighbor, the sweetest girl I'd ever met. This town had been my refuge from the life we'd known back in Nashville. 2 years without drama, and now, in the spring of my senior year, he comes waltzing back into my life as if nothing ever happened. When are you going to forgive me, Tay? Kade asked, remorse and hurt creeping into his otherwise cocky demeanor. Seriously, haven't I done my time? Kade, I'm not sure I can ever forgive you. I kept walking away, knowing he'd follow whether I wanted him to or not. Taylor, he called to me when I'd only made it 4 feet down the driveway. He meant business when he hauled out the big guns and called me by my given name. Nobody called me Taylor. I'd been Tay since I could remember. Don't do this, man, he said. We've been apart long enough, don't you think? Kade, I finally have real friends who don't know you exist. I've never told any of these guys about you. I don't want you screwing up my life again. That's harsh. Kade scuffed his foot on the sidewalk. Here in Clarksville, nobody had ever judged me because I was Kade's brother. I turned to confront him. Can't we just stick to the plan? Call you my cousin who came to live with us because your parents are going through a divorce. Do you honestly think people are going to believe that? Kade raised his eyebrows. We may be fraternal, but we still look like twins. No, Kade, we don't. I would never wear my hair that long. I lifted one of his rock star wannabe shaggy curls, then glanced at his upper arm. I don't dress in black clothes, and I can't imagine getting a tattoo. Don't diss the tat. This baby's a work of art. Kade lifted the sleeve of his faded Buxton Peak concert t-shirt and revealed a tattoo of their logo. Obsessed much? How did you even get that? I asked. We're not 18 yet. I got a fake ID, bro. Of course he did. Why was I even surprised? See, and that is why I will never let you date my best friend. I started checking off indiscretions on my fingers. Dishonesty, theft, selling drugs, using drugs. He cut me off. I have been clean for 2 years. Only because you've been locked up, I said, stepping closer and getting in his face. Now that you're out, who's to say you aren't going right back into your old ways? I'll prove it to you, Kade said. I won't let you down this time. Prove it to me by pretending to be my cousin and don't screw up my life again. Now who's being dishonest? Dang, he had me. In this case, it's justifiable, I said. Yeah, well, mine was too. His gaze lowered again. You don't know the whole story, and if you did, you'd be thanking me. I doubt that, I grumbled. I understood that he deserved a second chance, but not at the expense of my best friend. I'll try to forgive you, but I'm not setting you up with Gracie. Whatever, cuz. Kade bumped his shoulder against mine. Introduce me to your best friend, and I will try not to flirt with her. Thank you. I led him next door and knocked on the screen. She bounded down the hall, squealing with excitement. He's here, he's here, he's here! You told her I was coming? Kade asked. I had to have an excuse why I missed her tennis match this morning. Do you attend all her tennis matches? Yeah, I said. And you claim you're just friends? Best friends, I corrected him. There's a difference. Right, we'll go with that. Gracie swung open the door with enthusiasm. A grin spread across her face. Hello, gorgeous, Kade said. Apparently, Kade had a non-existent short-term memory because he forgot about the promise he'd just made not to flirt with her. She giggled in response. Gracie, this is my cousin Kade. I cringed as the lie fell from my lips. Kade, this is my best friend, Gracie. Chapter 2. Gracie. Lucky. Nice to meet you, Kade. I was beyond excited to meet Taylor's cousin. I knew very little about his family, as close as we were. Taylor and I have been best friends for 2 years, but he didn't talk about anyone other than his immediate household and his grandma Kendrick. Even on his trips to see his dad during school breaks, Tay never talked about him, and I figured it was better not to ask. "Likewise," Kade said. "I've heard a lot about you." Taylor elbowed him in the side, and Kade let out a nervous laugh. "I'm sorry I didn't make it to your tennis match this morning," Taylor said, shuffling his feet on the porch's wood planking and shoving his hands into the pockets of his khaki shorts. Taylor seemed nervous and more apologetic than he normally would when he missed one of my matches. I mean, I was sad he wasn't there, but I understood. When something came up, especially something as exciting as seeing a cousin for the first time in years. "That's okay," I said with a wave of my hand. "I'm happy you were able to go pick up your cousin. I can totally tell you guys are cousins, by the way. You look exactly alike." I looked a lot like my cousin Veronica, but the resemblance between Taylor and Kade was on a whole new level. "Told you," Kade said to Taylor. Kade's smoldering eyes, so similar to Taylor's, hid beneath disheveled brown curls that brushed just below his jawline. "Nah," Taylor answered. "I would never wear my hair that long." "And you don't dress in all black, either." I looked Kade up and down. He wore dark, ripped jeans with an incredibly tight Buxton Peak shirt that emphasized his muscles in an all-too-tempting way. Kade certainly pushed off the bad boy rock star vibe. Girls would no doubt flock to him at school on Monday. "See, she knows me." Taylor raised his eyebrows at his cousin as if saying, "I told you so." My classy best friend Taylor was more preppy with his collared shirt and khaki shorts. His clean-cut hair had a side part and the thick locks shone in the sunshine. He belonged at a country club on a golf course with high-end clubs and his own caddy. Well, I can't wait for her to get to know me. Although Kade spoke to his cousin, his message was clearly directed my way. A smile spread across Kade's face as he brushed his thick brown curls out of his eyes and gave me a wink. As he moved, his cologne washed over me. "Tay, you didn't tell me how hot your cousin is," I said to Taylor while flirtatiously glancing at Kade out of the corner of my eyes. Maybe it was a bit bold and definitely not my normal go-to, but there was something about this Kade and Taylor combo that was throwing me off balance. "Well, gee, if he's hot and we look just alike, does that mean you think that I'm hot too?" "Oh, please, you're my best friend. I could never think that you were hot." I jostled Tay's shoulder playfully, knowing it was a lie since I had a crush on him since we first met. The disappointment on Taylor's face was evident that he was offended by my statement. I needed to soften the blow while also not giving away my secret infatuation with him. "But now that I know how hot your cousin is, I might have to take a closer look at you." I used my hands to make a finger frame, focusing on his face as I pretended to zoom in and out. We both chuckled, and the tension in the air was gone almost as quickly as it arrived. Crisis averted. "Despite his good looks, it's not like you two would go out anyways," Kade said. "Otherwise, it would have happened already." "Yeah, right. Like you and I could ever go out. Not." Something about him saying that made me wish we could go out. I tried not to think of him that way. It would hurt too much if he didn't like me back. "Well, a non-committal makeout session would have been a good option too," Kade said. "Come on, dude, not cool," Taylor groaned, smacking him on the arm again. "We're friends. I've told you this 1,000,000 times already." Kade had a point. Making out would have been a fun option. Clearly, Taylor didn't want that, though, and I wasn't about to lose him as a friend even though I wanted more. "Yeah, we're just friends. Speaking of which, Tay, I'm totally going to set you up with one of my friends so that the 4 of us can go on a double date." Someone should be able to enjoy how amazing I already knew Tay is. Besides, that would give me an excuse to go out with Taylor without really going out with him. I loved double dates for this very reason. "Does that mean you want to go on a date with me?" Kade asked. "Gee, I should probably wait for you to ask me that, huh?" I bit my lower lip, pretending to be coy. I flipped my hair over my shoulder and placed my fist on my popped-out hip, trying my best to show confidence. "You're a blunt one, aren't you?" Kade asked. "You don't know the half of it," Taylor said under his breath. He put his hands behind his head and didn't try to hide his obvious annoyance with his cousin. "Gracie, would you like to go on a date with me?" "Yes," I blurted out. Realizing I should take it back a notch, I cleared my throat and said calmly, "That would be lovely, thank you." Taylor rolled his eyes and grumbled something under his breath again, but I couldn't hear what he said. I would have to ask him about what his deal was later. "What's your favorite restaurant?" Kade asked, either completely unaware of Taylor's distaste for the situation or openly choosing to ignore it. "That's not a very fun first date, now is it? Maybe something like mini-golf or hiking instead." "Wow, she is an absolute athlete like you, Tay," Kade said. Taylor chose to ignore his comment. "Maybe you should figure out which one of your friends you're going to set me up with before you decide where we're going on our double date." "True. Okay, I'll have to think about that. What color hair should the girl have? Should she be an athlete or should she be an artsy type?" "I guess hair like yours." He brushed a piece of my hair behind my ear. I held my breath as his fingertips felt like electricity on my cheek. A slow smile crept across Taylor's face as if he was deep in thought. He quickly pulled his hand back and cleared his throat. "And for the rest of it, surprise me. If she's anything like you, I'm sure we'll get along just fine." There was awkward silence for a few seconds before Kade said, "It was really nice to meet you, Gracie. But we should probably get going to help Aunt Rhonda with dinner. I look forward to our date once we find a hottie for Tay." Kade swung his arm around Tay's shoulders, and Taylor grimaced before forcing a smile and stepping aside so Kade was no longer touching him. Taylor glanced over at me and said, "Let me know if you find a friend willing to go out with me." "Very funny. You know any girl is more than willing," I responded and blew him a kiss as they walked away, back across the lawn to Taylor's house. As soon as they went inside, I whipped out my phone to text my best friend, Maddie. "You are never going to believe this. How is this even happening right now? Taylor's cousin came to live with him and he is totally hot. And get this, he asked me out. I already thought I was lucky having the hottest guy in school for my neighbor and best friend, but now I also get to be around his equally hot cousin. Thank you, universe, for blessing me this fine afternoon." My fingers hovered over the keys, wanting to text my other best friend, Laura, but reminded myself for the billionth time that she still wasn't speaking to me. I decided to look through my contacts to find a date for Tay. I was running out of options at school since I'd set him up so many times, but I just made a new friend, Hannah, at one of the shops downtown and decided to text her. I slid the phone back into my pocket and hurried to my room, jumping onto my bed to stare at the Buxton Peak poster on my ceiling. I usually did my best thinking when I was looking at that poster because it reminded me of Taylor. His taking me to their concert in Nashville for my 17th birthday had been the highlight of my summer last year. I had hoped that I'd have the guts to tell him how I really felt, but if he didn't like me back, I would have had a sour memory tied to one of my best. Not to mention the hour-long car ride back that would have been incredibly awkward otherwise. My phone buzzed. It was Hannah saying she would love to go on a double date if it meant Taylor Kendrick would be her date. As I suspected, mini-golf sounded fun to her. Wish he was mine. I put my phone down while I allowed myself to get lost again in my memories with Taylor before heading over to his house to let the guys know the plan. Chapter 3. Taylor. Paul Reed Smith. "What the heck was that all about?" I smacked Kade on the arm. We'd barely stepped off the porch at Gracie's and I was ready to have a throwdown fight with my twin. "You promised you weren't going to flirt with Gracie." "I said I would try not to flirt with her." Kade smacked me back. "There's a difference." "Whatever. I knew it was a bad idea having you come live here." We'd crossed the yards between Gracie's house and ours, and I opened the screen door, letting it fall closed behind me. "Where would you want me to live?" Kade asked, not calling me out on the door hitting his shoulder. "I don't know," I said. "With Dad, maybe? That's where I got in trouble in the first place. Do you want me around my old friends?" "You choose who you hang out with." I bypassed the kitchen, knowing Mom was bringing home food in an hour. I didn't want to disturb her spotless masterpiece she paid a cleaning lady to maintain as if she weren't raising 5 children. "Well, I choose to hang out with you, my brother." Kade followed me, relentlessly worming his way back into my otherwise perfect new life. Don't call me that. I turned on him. You're my cousin, remember? Right, because I'm just supposed to forget about the first 15 years of my life when I was your twin, and the past 2 years while I was in juvie and you barely came to visit me. I was less than an hour away. I've moved on with my life. I made my point by continuing down the hall to the staircase. Yeah, well, you're going to have to fit me back into your new life, he continued, following me. You can start by wearing nicer clothes and cutting your hair, I suggested. Then people really will think we're twins. He had a point. Fine, keep your ripped jeans and leave your hair long like a rock star. I took the stairs 2 at a time, but he was relentless in his pursuit. I love rock stars. Speaking of which, can I play your PRS? I miss that little baby. Kade bypassed his own bedroom, which already had his personal items organized exactly how Mom thought he would want them. He had a lot of nerve asking to play my guitar after what he did. Do you even remember how to play? I entered my own bedroom, resigned that I would get 0 privacy for the next few months of my life before heading to Stanford for college. My twin was attempting to make up for lost time together. Just like riding a bike. Kade strode over to the guitar stand in the corner of my room and picked up the one-of-a-kind Paul Reed Smith electric guitar, signed by Ian Taylor himself, the man I was named after. My mom always said my dad loved Ian and his rock band more than he loved her. Guess that's why they lived in separate homes now. Mom got tired of always being second choice. They could use Grandma Kendrick and her heart attack as the excuse, but none of the kids believed that. At least our mom and dad were still married and still crazy about each other, even if they no longer lived together. I lay down on my bed and grabbed a tennis ball. I threw it toward the ceiling and watched it fall neatly back into my hand, over and over. Kade plugged in the amp and let the reverb fill my spacious bedroom. My eyes closed involuntarily. I might not have my brother's talent, but I could appreciate listening to him play. Took me back to a simpler time in my life. Within a few minutes, our 16-year-old brother Clay entered my room and sat on the floor at Kade's feet, gazing up at him with hero worship in his eyes. Our older brother, Sean, home from college in celebration of Kade getting out of juvie, came in and plopped into the giant beanbag in the corner. Lastly, little Raina skipped into the room, climbed onto my bed, and snuggled into my arms. Her hand reached close to her face, the thumb twitching to her mouth. I grunted at her, reminding her subtly to remember her age. Kindergartners don't suck their thumbs. I know that. Raina pulled her hand away from her face and tucked it behind her back. For a few moments, we all listened while our brother played guitar, until suddenly another face appeared in the doorway to my bedroom. I sat up in surprise. Gracie, what are you doing here? Chapter 4. Gracie, Poster Child. Taylor's face lit up with a smile, and his little sister clamored to extricate herself from his arms when she saw me. Gracie! Little Raina scrambled off the bed and ran across the spacious room, jumping into my arms. I laughed as she wrapped her arms around my neck. Didn't know I was missing a concert, I said, leaning against the doorway of Taylor's bedroom. I shifted the heavy 6-year-old onto my hip. The music stopped and Kade placed his hand across the strings of the guitar he was holding, silencing the reverb. I'd let myself into Taylor's back door and through the kitchen, as I always did, and heard loud music from upstairs. I was surprised to see that they were all gathered around Kade. Did you know Kade is here? Raina asked, as if Kade wasn't right in front of me. I haven't seen him in years. It's only been a few months since you saw me, Ray. Kade switched off the amp to stop the sound altogether. Don't let me stop you from playing, I said. Nice to see that guitar getting some use. Tay never plays it. I carried Raina across the room and sat on Taylor's bed. Their younger brother, Clay, sat on the floor at Kade's feet as if he idolized his cousin. Hey, that thing's a collector's item, Taylor defended. It's going to be worth something someday. It's worth something now, idiot, their older brother, Sean, said from the beanbag in the corner. It's a custom private stock Paul Reed Smith guitar that is signed by Ian Taylor. There is nothing else like it in the world. I glanced up at the poster above Taylor's bed, and his eyes followed mine. How did you manage to get that guitar anyway? When Ian found out I was named after him, he gave it to me as a birthday present, Taylor said, still gazing at the poster where the rock band Buxton Peak stood in a pose worthy of a world-renowned boy band with a hint of rock god thrown in. They were a little younger in the photo than they were now, but it was a great poster. It was even matted and framed. For the first time, I realized the poster wasn't just signed by the band members. It had personalized autographs written to Taylor. Dang. I set Raina on the bed and rose to get a closer look. Happy birthday, little Tay. Love, Andy Smith. That was signed next to the band's bassist. Tay, thanks for screaming at our concert. Gonna get you some headphones. Love, Nathaniel Jackson. That was next to their drummer. Love you, Tay. Happy first birthday. That was scrawled next to the band's lead guitarist, Kai Burton. And last was a larger signature next to their frontman, Ian Taylor, who must have been the guy who gifted the poster along with the guitar. So cool that your parents named you after me, little Tay. Love you, buddy. Ian Taylor. A guitar is a pretty expensive first birthday gift, I said, turning back to Taylor. Ian's a billionaire, Taylor dismissed my concern. He can afford it. Want to hear me play it? Kade asked me, but looked to Taylor, almost as if getting his permission. They glared at each other for a moment, and I sensed more tension between the two of them. Whatever, Taylor mumbled and looked away. He lay on his bed and tossed a tennis ball into the air, letting it fall back into his hand. I wanted to comfort him, but decided he and I could talk later when we could be alone. My best friend was having a tough day, and I needed to find out why. As he continued tossing the ball in the air, I turned back to Kade. I'd love to hear you play. No one else seemed to notice the tension between Taylor and their cousin. We all settled into our spots, and Kade turned the amplifier back on. Without thinking about it, I leaned against Taylor's headboard and pulled my feet up on the bed. Taylor stilled for a second in response to me practically cuddled up by his side. He leaned his shoulder against my leg and glanced up at me, vulnerability in his eyes. I wondered if the tension between him and his cousin had anything to do with Kade flirting with me. Such a protective best friend. I winked at Taylor, then faced Kade as the sound of reverb filled the room. Taylor resumed throwing his ball. Kade was seriously talented on the guitar. No wonder the family was gathered around to listen. I was caught up in the music as he played songs from Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Chuck Berry, Eddie Van Halen, Guns N' Roses, Carlos Santana, and Buxton Peak. He played Kai Burton's solo from their most popular song, Passing Through Eternity, so well that I'd swear I was listening to a recording. That was Taylor's favorite song, so he listened to it a lot. I guess if I were named after a rock star, his band would become my favorite band also. After a little while of listening, a door slammed downstairs and Rhonda called up to us. Kids, I brought pizza. Pizza! Clay hopped off the floor and headed out of the room. 16-year-old boys were perpetually hungry. Pizza, pizza, pizza! Raina slid down from the bed and followed her brother. Dang, you'd think they'd never been fed before. As Kade turned off the amp and put the guitar in its stand, I caught Taylor's tennis ball mid-throw. Want to go hit some balls after dinner? I asked Taylor quietly, speaking to just him. I would love that. Taylor glanced up at me, his brown eyes smoldering. Dang, I wished he liked me as more than a friend. When Kade cleared his throat from across the room, Taylor sat up and glared at him. Don't even think about it. You can have your date with Gracie another day. Tennis is our thing. Yeah, tennis is our thing, I teased as Taylor swung his legs over the side of the bed. I stood to get out of his way and helped him to his feet. Hey, have you figured out who you're going to set me up with yet? Taylor asked. Yes. I realized I hadn't told him the reason I came over. My friend Hannah from one of the shops downtown, she said she's free on Friday night if you're both up for some mini-golf. Whoever isn't up for mini-golf? Kade asked with sarcastic enthusiasm. I wondered if his idea of fun on a Friday night involved something stronger than mini-golf. Yes, Friday sounds perfect. Taylor put his hand on the small of my back, leading me out into the hallway. Let's eat some pizza and then head over to the courts, okay? Taylor was looking at me intensely as if he was trying to communicate something he didn't want to say in front of his cousin. This wasn't like Taylor, and I hoped he would be willing to open up when we got to the courts. Whenever you're ready, Tay, I responded, looking him straight in the eyes for several seconds, hoping to convey the message that I was ready to listen as soon as he was ready to talk. Kade coughed from the doorway to Taylor's bedroom. So, gorgeous, Gracie, I hear we have chemistry together. Kade's emphasis on chemistry was purposely provocative. Through nearly clenched teeth, Taylor said to me, I went ahead and shared our schedules with Kade. That was very thoughtful of you, Tay. I patted Taylor on the shoulder. I'll make sure Kade has a great first day at his new school. I bet you will. Kade's suggestive comment earned him a punch in the arm from his cousin. As I skipped down the stairs ahead of them, I could hear Kade and Taylor talking aggressively to each other under their breaths. Maybe they weren't rekindling their childhood friendship. When I walked into the kitchen, Rhonda offered me a slice of pizza, which I gladly accepted. She looked tired, and I marveled at how brave she was to take on one more mouth to feed when she was already raising 4 kids as a single mom. There was a possibility that my mom might soon know how that felt, and I wasn't ready. My parents hadn't officially split up yet, but the threat hung over our family like an ominous cloud. At least my best friend would be able to comfort me through my parents' divorce. If it came down to that, I didn't want it to come down to that. Chapter 5. Hero's Journey Story Structure. In the hero's journey, the hero leaves an ordinary life to set off on a quest to save the world. While on this adventure, the hero acquires a mentor, a team of friends, a magic ring or talisman, single-handedly saves the world, and returns home a triumphant and changed being. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien is a great literary example of the hero's journey story structure. Our soon-to-be-famous earthquake story is another great example. The following bullets are the key points in this plot structure that you'll be learning about in this chapter. Act 1. Setup. Departure. Bullet points. The ordinary world. Call to adventure. Refusal of the call. Meeting the mentor. Crossing the threshold. Act 2. Initiation. Bullet points. Test. Allies. Enemies. Approach to the inmost cave. The ordeal. Reward. Seizing the sword. Act 3. Return. The road back. Resurrection. Return with the elixir. Act 1. Setup. Departure. The ordinary world. This is the setup for your story, introducing the hero in their everyday life. Give the reader a reason to like the hero and hint at something that displeases them or something the hero wishes were different. This might be a good time to show the hero as lonely or wishing they had a significant other, but not the time to introduce the love interest. There is usually no romance, other than possibly a desire for something more in the hero's life. Earthquake story. Main plot. For the hero's journey outline, let's tweak our premise a little. Our hero is a seismologist who is aware that an earthquake is building beneath Anchorage, Alaska, which is likely to cause a large tsunami along the west coast of the United States. Because he's known as a doomsday crier who regularly lectures and warns people that a big earthquake is coming and coastal communities need to be preparing for a big tsunami, his warnings are largely ignored. Until the 9.2 megathrust earthquake happens and damage is reported all up and down the northern coastal region. Our hero is a geek who is so intelligent most people can't understand him anyway. He's lonely but resigned to the fact that he'll never find a woman who will share his passion or who is smart enough to hold a reasonable conversation. Romantic subplot? There is usually no romance other than possibly a desire for something more in their life. Call to adventure. Also called the inciting incident, the call to adventure is something disruptive that drives the hero out of an ordinary life and makes life uncomfortable. This is usually a challenge, mission, or quest with real stakes that are clear to the reader. The inciting incident should be exciting, dramatic, and important, and may even be a matter of life or death. This is something that has to be conquered before your hero can journey back to the ordinary world. The call to adventure is not a good time to have a love interest involved unless the call is to save or rescue the love interest. Your hero needs to have their mind focused on the call and not on matters of the heart. There is usually no romance other than possibly a desire for something more in their life. Earthquake story. Main plot. Our hero experiences the earthquake and its effects from where he lives in Portland, Oregon, but thinks there's nothing more he can do to protect the coastal cities from the likely tsunami, than what he has already done. He gets word from his sister, who lives near the tiny community of Cape Meares. She says they've been cut off from communication and won't receive word of the tsunami until it's too late. He is encouraged to go and warn the people there. Romantic subplot. There is usually no romance other than possibly a desire for something more in their life. Refusal of the call. Most heroes hesitate or refuse the call to adventure because the challenge is dangerous or comes with personal risk. Your hero should have a compelling reason to refuse, but an even bigger reason to take on the challenge. Perhaps your hero is leaving behind a potential love interest just as they're starting a relationship, but someone's life is at stake, and it falls on your hero to save that person. A good twist might combine a love interest back home and a potential love interest who is the person they're trying to save. Earthquake story. Main plot. Our hero refuses to drive all the way to the coast to warn the people because it's counterintuitive to the message he's trying to send, to move inland as quickly as possible. He knows they only have about 4 hours until the likely tsunami arrives. Then he learns of a beautiful park ranger at the local wildlife refuge who swears she witnessed the animals running away from the coast. He and another scientist, who has devoted his career trying to prove that animals can sense when a tsunami is coming, hop into the car and race toward the coast. They only have an hour-and-a-half drive and feel they can warn the people and still get far enough away from the coast before the tsunami arrives. Romantic subplot. Our hero learns about a beautiful park ranger at the local wildlife refuge who swears she witnessed the animals running away from the coast. He's curious about her observance, but hasn't met her yet. Meeting the mentor. The mentor should be someone with wisdom and experience to provide your hero with training, confidence, tools, knowledge, or skills needed to overcome the hero's previous objections and become physically and mentally ready to succeed on the journey. Remember, this happens after the hero has responded to the call to adventure, but during the time when the hero still has hesitations. You should make it clear that without the mentor, your hero would not be able to succeed. Include some sort of revelation or tool your hero needs, or thinks they need, to overcome the main story challenge. The mentor should not be the love interest, but could be a good person to turn to later on in the story when the hero is looking for advice during the romantic subplot dark moment. Earthquake story. Main plot. As they're driving toward the coast, the other scientist verses our hero on everything he needs to know about animal behavior and how to use observations to predict where the worst of the devastation will occur. Romantic subplot. Our hero hasn't met the beautiful park ranger yet, but he and the other scientists talk about her, if only in regard to her observation. Crossing the threshold. This is the pivotal turning point, or point of no return, when the hero is thrust out of the ordinary world and into the unknown world by some external force, such as an antagonist or a dramatic event. Often an explosion occurs, or the mentor is killed off, or an important item or person is stolen or kidnapped. Perhaps the love interest could be kidnapped or fall into a crevice, forcing your hero to repel after them even if your hero is afraid of heights. Whatever the conflict, this is the moment the hero is fully engaged in the challenge. No going back. Earthquake story. Main plot. When they arrive at the wildlife preserve, they meet the park ranger. She acts as an eyewitness and shows the scientists trail cams and maps and says she's willing to drive with them up to Cape Meares to warn the people. As they're driving, an aftershock occurs, which causes a landslide that destroys the road to get back to civilization. In the process, the mentor is crushed in a landslide, killed, and is removed from the story. This will be devastating to the hero, but he knows he must go on, or he won't save the people in time. Romantic subplot. Our hero meets the beautiful park ranger, with whom he feels an instant connection. This would be the meet-cute of the romantic subplot. Act 2. Initiation. Test, allies, enemies. Your hero will face a series of challenges in the new unknown world, which will test their new skills and knowledge. Although your hero has new tools and confidence, they are still learning how to best utilize them. Overwhelm your hero with dangers and enemies that are actively working against the hero, making the hero in need of assistance from allies. If you haven't already introduced a love interest in your story, now would be the time. The love interest could be an ally or an enemy. They could be someone who starts off as just another person in the group of allies and quickly stands out as the obvious love interest. This is about as far into the story as you should wait before including a romantic subplot. You want the reader to care about the love interest in order for them to understand your hero's desire to have a relationship with that person. These things take time. Earthquake story. Main plot. They meet up with the local governmental leadership, who also agree to help warn the people. They divide and conquer, intending to encourage everyone to meet up at the local fire department. Multiple aftershocks occur, creating more landslides that cut them off from civilization. Romantic subplot. Our hero and the park ranger travel together and feel sparks fly even as they're on this perilous mission. Getting into the truck together would be an example of something pulling them together, and when multiple aftershocks occur and they're cut off from the civilization, that would be an inciting action that forces them together. During this perilous mission, a decision is made to make the best of the situation through forced interactions and working together. Approach to the inmost cave. Having survived the previous tests and challenges, your hero and allies deserve a brief reprieve. This is their chance to regroup, reflect on recent events, and formulate a new plan. They may need to gather supplies, bandage wounds, and prepare to face the next challenge. This would be a great time for your hero and the love interest to have a tender moment, maybe even an almost kiss that gets interrupted. Or if you're writing something a little spicier, to let off a little sexual tension. Only include a little bit of romance, though. You want the tension in the main plot and romantic subplot to continue to build. Earthquake story. Main plot. They get most of the community to the fire station and regroup, make a plan, and provide triage to the injured. Romantic subplot. During that time, our hero and his new love interest share an almost kiss that gets interrupted by a woman running into the building, claiming her son and his friend were playing at the beach and now she can't find them. The ordeal. The ordeal should be a dramatic transformative event with the highest stakes so far that tests your hero at the central conflict in the story. Your hero will need to draw upon new skills and knowledge and transition through a dark moment. This section will trigger a metaphorical death and rebirth of the hero and may include the loss of an ally, mentor, or loved one. If you're writing a tragedy, this might include the death of your love interest, or maybe a major injury to the love interest, prompting your hero to face all remaining challenges while attempting to carry their love interest to safety. I know this seems harsh, but remember that romance is the subplot, not the main story. As a romance writer, I prefer happy endings, so I'll probably never write a tragedy, but they are extremely popular, so follow your muse. Earthquake story. Main plot. Of course, our hero and the park ranger leap into action along with other members of the team and head to the beach intent on finding the two children. They are running out of time. They have to rely on each other's expertise, knowing of geography and geology and cartography, and work together to find those boys. Romantic subplot. The woman running into the building, claiming her son and his friend are missing at the beach, is an unexpected twist that forces them together, and their running to the coast to find the kids is negotiating the unexpected twist. Reward. Seizing the sword. Your hero and most of the allies have made it through the ordeal and are allowed a moment to stop and celebrate a victory. This is another chance to catch their breath, regroup, and reflect on all that has happened so far. Their reward for everything they've endured is usually an item or knowledge your hero has been fighting for, something they will need to defeat the antagonist in the coming climax. This is the perfect spot for your hero and love interest to finish what they started during that almost kiss or minor release of sexual tension. This is a great place for a passionate kiss and the big declaration of love. Earthquake story. Main plot. They find the boys and get them to safety. This is a great moment to stop and celebrate a victory. Romantic subplot. Our hero and his love interest share a big passionate kiss to finish what they started during the almost kiss or minor release of sexual tension. There could also be the big declaration of love and hope that they can find a way to begin a relationship. Act 3. Return. The road back. But wait, there's more. Just because they've obtained a reward doesn't mean their trials are over. On the contrary, On the road back, your hero and allies will face their most dire circumstances. There will be an increase in tension, heightened stakes, and preparation for the final battle. They know they must face the antagonistic force head-on, and failure is not an option. Remember that the romance is the subplot. This is the time to reconfirm the danger and urgency of the central conflict of the story, to remind the reader why your hero started on this journey in the first place. Now would be a good time for your hero and love interest to work together hand in hand to prepare to face the climatic ending. Alternatively, they could be forced apart during this dire circumstance, heightening the tension and stakes. Earthquake story. Main plot. They realize they've gathered the people to safety after the earthquake, but the tsunami is now only a few moments away. To the horror of the adults, some of the teenagers decide they want to stand on the cliffs overlooking the ocean to watch the tsunami move onto the shore. The adults put themselves in danger to bring the teens back, only to encounter landslides and aftershocks, and one of the teens nearly falls off the cliff during a rock slide and holds on by a tree root. Romantic subplot. There won't be much romance in this section other than our hero and his love interest working together to get the teens to safety. Resurrection. The resurrection is the ultimate showdown between your hero and the villain or antagonistic force. This is the climax of the story, where your hero is fighting for more than just themselves. They're fighting to save other people or even save the world. The hero is using all that has been learned throughout the journey and undergoes the greatest test of those new abilities. The hero defeats the antagonist and comes out of the confrontation transformed in some dramatic way. This would be a great time for your hero, who has now proven himself worthy to be called a hero, and love interest, to share a tender and grateful hug. Often, as the main conflict is coming to a close, their love story is just beginning. They might have many happy adventures in the years to come, but our main plot is not quite finished, so let's keep going. Earthquake story. Main plot. Just as the adults pull the teen up from where he's hanging off the ledge, they watch the tsunami move toward the shore, wave heights gaining in size until they are nearly over the cliffs. They race inland, encountering more obstacles, and one member of the team is nearly washed out to sea. They finally get far enough inland and to high enough ground and count the survivors. Romantic subplot. Our hero and the beautiful park ranger share a tender hug and hope for a future together. Return with the elixir. Welcome your hero back to the ordinary world with a celebration and newfound respect as a reward for facing terrible dangers and risking their life. This is a chance to reiterate the hero's growth and the reasons for the journey. The hero can be seen as confidently displaying whatever prize they brought home, such as new skills or abilities, an object, knowledge, or understanding of the world. Perhaps the quote-unquote prize is the love interest. If the original goal of the story was to rescue the princess, this is a very logical prize. Perhaps your hero is returning with the love interest as equals, holding hands, triumphantly returning together. But again, remember that the romance is a subplot. The hero is coming home from the hero's journey, not a romance journey. The hero just happened to have found love along the way. Earthquake story. Main plot. Our hero is met with celebration and newfound respect in the scientific community. He now has an eyewitness account of the animal's behaviors and proof that his predictions about the earthquake and tsunami were accurate. Romantic subplot. He and the beautiful park ranger move to Portland to start a relationship, and the assumption is that they live happily ever after. Note: if you would like a complimentary printable copy of all the tables, outlines, and bonus materials mentioned in this book, please email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. That's julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. Chapter 6. Save the Cat Plot Structure. Originally developed for film, the Save the Cat plot structure focuses on creating a character the reader cares about and seems to be a more detailed version of the 3-act plot structure. This structure is mainly used for character-driven stories with a hero whose mission or adventure is blocked by an antagonistic force. The midpoint of the story is always the point at which a big plot twist is revealed and the hero realizes they are, for better or worse, in a fight for their life. The second half of the story leads to a final scene that is either a victory or catastrophe for the lead character. Using the Save the Cat plot structure helps with the placement of essential plot points, such as an inciting incident, a life-changing event, or the false defeat of an antagonistic force. This organization usually follows a beat sheet, which is an organized list of major plot events and pivotal moments that authors can use to map out their story during the outline stage. The following bullets are the key points in this plot structure that you'll be learning about in this chapter. Opening image, theme stated, setup, catalyst, debate, break into two, B-story, fun and games, midpoint, bad guys close in, all is lost, dark night of the soul, break into three, the finale, and final image. Beat number 1, opening image, 0 to 1%. The opening image is a short visual description of your main character, a snapshot of their world before the story begins, and the overall feel and tone of the story. There is usually no romance at this stage other than possibly a desire for something more in their life. Earthquake story. Main plot. As with the other outlines, let's have our hero be a seismologist who is aware that an earthquake is building beneath Anchorage, Alaska, which is likely to cause a large tsunami along the west coast of the United States. Our hero is a geek who is so intelligent most people can't understand him anyway. Romantic subplot. There is usually no romance at this stage, but it could be noted that our hero is lonely and resigned to the notion that he'll never find a woman who will share his passion or who is smart enough to hold a reasonable conversation. Beat number 2. Theme stated, 5%. Theme is a central topic, subject, or message that the reader should be shown within the first 5% of the story, although the main character may not be aware of it yet. This is the story's deeper meaning, the life lesson your hero will learn. Some examples include good versus evil, pursuit of love, coming of age, man versus nature, man versus self, man versus society, faith versus doubt, Cinderella, rags to riches, riches to rags. Certain themes are more likely to include romance, such as the pursuit of love or a Cinderella story, but many are not. Be careful not to force romance into a story just because you want it to be there. Earthquake story. Main plot. The main theme for the earthquake story is man versus nature. Other themes could include man versus society, convincing the scientific community that our hero is not a doomsday kook, and man versus self, overcoming one's own fears. Romantic subplot. Because the romance is a subplot, it's understated. However, this earthquake love story is a classic mystery thriller suspense theme of working together to rescue or save someone or something. Beat number 3. Setup. 1% to 10%. The setup includes a deeper dive into your hero's life, introducing other characters and challenges the hero is dealing with, such as health problems, toxic relationships, character flaws, etc. With the introduction of more characters, a love interest could be woven into the story. If handled correctly, adding in romance at this stage in your story could develop the story into a multi-genre romance, where the romantic plot is equal in hierarchy to whatever other plot is involved. Earthquake story. Main plot. The first 10% of the story should show the hero in his natural environment as a seismologist who is either warning people about the dangers or being called upon to consult others in their rescue efforts. Because our hero regularly gives lectures and training to coastal communities teaching about earthquake and tsunami preparation, his warning goes largely ignored or dismissed as doomsday ranting. In the beginning of our story, our hero is teaching a group of high school students in the tiny community of Cape Mears about earthquakes and tsunamis and pointing down the cliff explaining how an earthquake on the other side of the world could create a tsunami that could travel across the ocean and climb up those cliffs and wash away the town. All the teenagers poo-pooed his warnings except one intelligent boy who had lots of questions and seemed to know a lot about geology. While they were yet teaching, they felt a tremor, which gave him the chance to talk about where in the world that earthquake might have happened, and talk about how large the earthquake likely was. They talk about how the further away the earthquake, the larger it would have to be in order for them to feel it. Our hero speculated that this one was large but far away. As they're standing on the edge of the cliffs, looking out into the ocean, an aftershock broke part of the cliff and a girl fell. The hero and the intelligent teen boy work together to rescue her. That's our save the cat moment. It's dramatic and suspenseful, but it happens before the catalyst. Romantic subplot. Romance is not usually included at this stage in the story unless it's just a meet-cute or something superficial. The focus needs to stay on the main plot. Beat number 4. Catalyst. 10%. Otherwise known as the inciting incident, the catalyst is what starts the story rolling. Your hero is catapulted into a crisis or life-changing event, which disrupts their entire worldview. During this stage, the love interest would likely be experiencing the inciting incident alongside the hero. If they recently met, they are likely still close to one another at the time the crisis or life-changing event occurs. Earthquake story. Main plot. In this version of the story, the version of the story that we're writing with the Save the Cat story structure, the earthquake is not the inciting incident or catalyst. Our hero has returned to his home in Portland and is analyzing the data from the earthquake when he predicts that a tsunami is likely to occur. He gets word that there is damage all up and down the northern coastal region, and the community of Cape Mears, where he'd been teaching 2 hours prior, has been cut off from communication. They won't receive word of the tsunami until it's too late. He is encouraged to go and warn the people there. The catalyst in our earthquake story is the moment when Cape Mears is cut off from communication. Romantic subplot. There is no notable romance at this stage in the story. Beat number 5. Debate. 10% to 20%. Usually internal, the debate is the moment your hero resists doing what needs to be done and is reluctant to change. The hero is wondering what to do and where to go because he wants his world to stay the same. If your story already contains a love interest at this point, they are likely involved in the reluctance to change. A common plot point in a romance novel involves the two love interests denying their attraction and desire to be together. Even if you have a multi-genre story, the reluctance and debate sections don't have to occur at the same time. If, for instance, your hero finds out they have cancer and meets an attractive nurse at the hospital, the debate may include whether to fight the cancer with chemotherapy or let the cancer run its course. The hesitance about starting a new relationship might happen a few chapters later when the hero and the nurse realize they have feelings for each other, but know it's not a good idea to get involved with someone who might be dying. Earthquake story. Main plot. The hero is reluctant to drive to the coast because it's counterintuitive to the message he's trying to send, to move inland as quickly as possible. He knows they only have about 2 hours until the likely tsunami arrives. He is debating whether he should travel to the coast when the tsunami is only hours away. Romantic subplot. There is not usually romance at this stage in the story. Beat number 6. Break into 2. 20%. As the story moves into Act 2, your hero recognizes that inaction is not an option and is now fully invested in rising to meet the challenge, even though the situation will include trials and obstacles. There is usually no romance at this pivotal moment unless the love interest is involved in making the decision to face the stated challenge. Earthquake story. Main plot. Our hero realizes that if he doesn't drive to the coast, the people in Cape Mears may not survive. They only have an hour-and-a-half drive and feel they can warn the people and still get far enough away from the coast before the tsunami arrives. People's lives are at stake. Romantic subplot. There is not usually romance at this stage in the story. Beat number 7. B story. 22%. This is a great place to add in the romance as the subplot because your hero is expected to meet a helper, rival, friend, or specialist whose purpose is to assist the hero on their life journey. This new character could be a love interest, or if the hero and love interest have met previously, something could happen in this scene to increase attraction. They could have an emotionally intimate moment or an almost kiss. Earthquake story. Main plot. The B story in our earthquake story involves the community working together to gather the people to the fire station. Romantic subplot. One of the community members helping with gathering the people is a woman who becomes the love interest. They have a meet-cute, but it's mainly superficial. Beat number 8. Fun and games. 20% to 50%. In the fun and games section, your hero will enjoy time when they are either floundering or succeeding while trying to reach their goals. This is not the big catastrophe. These are the little challenges you throw at your hero, testing their new abilities and playing with their emotions. Any of the usual romance plot points would make great additions to your main plot and add depth to your story. Some include sparks fly, something pulls them together and/or rips them apart, forced interactions or outings. You could also add in an antagonist, like an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, or situational antagonist. Have your characters begrudgingly admit to themselves that they are falling for each other. Increase togetherness, flirtatiousness, and affection. Add in an unexpected twist that forces them closer, etc. Earthquake story. Main plot. The fun and games section of our earthquake story includes a variety of challenges such as aftershocks, landslides, places where the characters are cut off from civilization. Our hero and his allies divide and conquer, intending to encourage everyone to meet up at the local fire department. Multiple aftershocks occur, more landslides, more places where they're cut off from civilization. Romantic subplot. The romantic subplot at this stage just means that the love interest is included in all the challenges. As they're talking, our hero learns the love interest is a single mom and realizes that the teen boy he was talking to at the beginning of the story is her son. Beat number 9. Midpoint. 50%. The midpoint might be a false victory or a false defeat, but should be something big that completely changes your hero's goals. They think their story is over, their work is done, they can go home. They quickly learn that what they thought they wanted isn't actually what they need, or they've hit rock bottom and think all hope is lost. But they learn there's another way they hadn't previously considered. Remember, this is the midpoint of the main plot, not the romantic subplot. During this stage of the story, any of the following could happen but are not necessary to the main plot. A real kiss, deepening desire, dread for impending separation, internal admission that they've fallen in love, hope for a future together, etc. Earthquake story. Main plot. They finally get most of the community to the fire station and they regroup, make a plan, and provide triage to those who were injured. A woman runs in claiming her son and his friend were playing at the beach and now she can't find them. Romantic subplot. During this time, our hero and his love interest share an almost kiss that gets interrupted by a woman running into the building claiming her son and his friend were playing at the beach and now she can't find them. Beat number 10. Bad guys close in. 50% to 75%. Remember that an antagonist is not always a person, but is more frequently an antagonistic force and can be internal or external. The bad guys could be characters or villains coming after your hero or their own self-sabotage. Whatever they are, they lead to a catastrophic ending. There is usually no romance at this pivotal moment unless the love interest is involved in fighting off the bad guys. Earthquake story. Main plot. Of course, our hero and the love interest leap into action, along with other members of the team, and head to the beach intent on finding the two children. They are running out of time. They have to rely on each other's expertise, knowledge of geography, geology, and cartography, and work together to find those boys. Romantic subplot. Our hero's love interest is among the team who goes to the beach to find the two children. Beat number 11. All is lost. 75%. Your hero will face a dark time when they are under extreme duress. This could involve a death or just the death of the hero's old self or old life. Remember, the all is lost moment described here is relating to the main plot, not the romantic subplot. The romantic relationship could be the only good thing holding your hero together through the dark moments in the main plot. Any of the following incidents that are usually required in a romance novel could be included, but they are not necessary to the main plot. Major setback in the romantic relationship, black moment, dark night of the soul, a grand gesture, a big final kiss, etc. Earthquake story. Main plot. The tsunami is now only a few moments away. The adults put themselves in danger to rescue the boys, only to encounter landslides and aftershocks, and one of the boys falls to his death, and there's absolutely nothing the adults can do to rescue him or even recover his body because the tsunami is just off the shore. Romantic subplot. The romantic relationship between our hero and the love interest is one of the few good things holding him together through this dark moment in the main plot. Beat number 12. Dark night of the soul. 75% to 80%. When all hope is lost, it's easy to transition into a depressive state when your hero has learned their lesson and has changed from their old self into someone new. This would be a great time to have the love interest comfort the struggling hero. This could be as tame as an arm around the hero's shoulder with comforting words, or as passionate as grasping onto the pro-offered comfort by taking their relationship past the point of friendship. Earthquake story. Main plot. The whole team is grateful that they are still alive, but mourn the loss of the boy who fell off the cliff. Romantic subplot. Our hero and the love interest share a tender hug. Beat number 13. Break into 3. 80%. As your hero moves into Act 3, they experience an epiphany, gain key knowledge that will help them fix their situation and climb up from rock bottom. After the way the love interest provided kindness and comfort in the previous section, she could be an integral part in your hero's epiphany or acquiring knowledge. Earthquake story. Main plot. The tsunami is only a few minutes away, and they watch the tsunami move toward the shore, wave heights gaining in size until they are nearly over the cliffs. They realize they need to run for their lives, but our hero can't seem to back away from the edge where the boy has fallen to his death. Romantic subplot. The love interest tells our hero that the boy would not have wanted the hero risking any more lives because of him. Her encouragement wakes him from his stupor and he agrees to run. Beat number 14. The finale. 80% to 99%. During the finale, your hero takes everything they've gained and learned and puts it to good use to defeat the bad guys, eliminate the antagonistic force, and find that not everything is lost. If your romantic subplot has progressed to a close relationship, your hero may work together with the love interest to defeat the bad guys, eliminate the antagonistic force, and save the day. Earthquake story. Main plot. They race inland, encountering more obstacles, but finally get far enough inland and to high enough ground and count the survivors. Our hero takes comfort that his predictions and quick action helped save many lives. Romantic subplot. The love interest is an integral part of the team that helps our hero save the day. Beat number 15. Final image. 99% to 100%. The final image should mirror the opening snapshot of your story, showing your hero after they have transcended the situation and represents the resolution of the story's theme. The final image of a Save the Cat story could look very similar to the ending of a romance novel, a glimpse of happily ever after. Earthquake story. Main plot. Although mourning the loss of life and damage to shoreline and properties, our hero takes comfort that his quick action saved many lives. Romantic subplot. Our hero and love interest stand together with her teen son, looking out at the ocean. He puts his arm around her, musses up the teen boy's hair with fondness, and they all live happily ever after. Note: if you would like a complimentary printable copy of all the tables, outlines, and bonus materials mentioned in this book, please email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. That's julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. Chapter 7. Fichtean Curve Story Structure. The Fichtean Curve is a fast-paced plot structure that opens with the conflict and has 3 parts: a rising action, a climax, and a falling action. The rising action takes up a large portion of the story and is nonlinear. This plot structure features a series of escalating crises that are each followed immediately by a de-escalating crisis, in which the stakes grow with each crisis. The climax is the crisis to end all other crises, and the moment the reader knows the hero has officially saved the day. Then the falling action ties up all loose ends and gives the reader a satisfying conclusion. The Fichtean Curve plot structure has a tendency to focus heavily on the crises and barely mentions the reprieves, but they're there. Still, there isn't a narrative exposition or inciting incident at the beginning of the structure. Rather, the opening scene is in the middle of a crisis, and this first crisis lasts approximately the first 15% of the story. Backstory, character development, and subplots are woven into the crises, including the romantic subplot. Part 1 of the Fichtean Curve is usually made up of 3 or 4 crises, each of which acts as a plot point, and each of which should raise the stakes and tension of the story. Every crisis should include a minor dip in tension and give your reader a breather, and should provide foreshadowing for the final conflict. This prepares your character for their final confrontation and adds deeper meaning and satisfaction to your reader at the conclusion of your story. Notes about the romantic subplot. Any or all of the crises and/or fallouts and transitions could include hints of romance. Some of the crises could even be caused by a romantic conflict. Beat 1. Rising Action, Crisis 1. Beginning of Part 1. The fallout of the first crisis leads into the second crisis, and situations continue to worsen for the hero. Earthquake story. Main plot. For our Fichtean Curve story, let's have our hero be a young seismologist who is a college professor in Anchorage, Alaska, when the earthquake hits. Remember, there isn't a narrative exposition or inciting incident at the beginning of the Fichtean Curve story structure. The opening scene is not the background about the seismologist or the earthquake. It's a small group of students huddled around their professor, and they experience an earthquake together and fall into a crevice. The opening line of the book could be something like, "Professor, why isn't this working?" and have him try to help one of his students get his handmade seismometer set up correctly. They're on location somewhere away from campus so the students can test out their cardboard creations. They think they're not getting the boxes set up correctly because they can't get them to hold still. Then they realize that what they're experiencing is an actual earthquake. Suddenly, the ground breaks apart and half the class of college student falls. When they're at the bottom of the crevice, they recognize that they are lucky to be alive. But they look up and realize they must work together to climb up the rock slide and save themselves. And all of that happens within Chapter 1. Romantic subplot. There isn't likely to be much romance in the opening scene, but there could be some hint that there's a spark of attraction between the professor and his grad student assistant, on whom he has a crush. Beat 2. Rising Action. Crisis 2. Middle of Part 1. The second crisis starts at about the 15% mark of the story. The fallout at the end of the second crisis may not be as severe as the fallout from the first crisis, and may include some character growth, life lessons learned, and flickers of hope. Earthquake story. Main plot. They get halfway up and then slide back down, and in the process, someone sprains their ankle. Romantic subplot. They start climbing and get halfway up, then slide back down. And in the process, the grad student assistant sprains her ankle. Beat 3. Rising Action. Crisis 3. Middle of Part 1. The third crisis starts at the 30% mark of the story. The fallout at the end of the third crisis may not be too severe and may show things looking up for the hero. That could include some romance. Earthquake story. Main plot. A pipe bursts and water starts filling the fissure they're trapped in. They try again to climb, but the grad student assistant is having a difficult time. Romantic subplot. They're trapped, but the love interest can't climb or swim because of her injury. Our hero and his love interest get some good interaction because she needs him to help her. At the end of the third crisis, he pulls her to safety. Beat 4. Rising Action. Crisis 4. End of Part 1. But wait, there's more. The fourth crisis will be bad and transitions directly into the climax. The fourth crisis starts at the 45% mark of the story and lasts through about 60 to 65% mark. Earthquake story. Main plot. Suddenly there's an aftershock. They fall back down and nearly drown. Romantic subplot. Although the situation is too dire and serious to warrant flirting, there should be a lot of longing and looking into each other's eyes and touching hands. Beat 5. Climax. Part 2. The climax is the pinnacle of the story and should include a difficult situation that cannot be easily resolved. If your hero has learned the required lessons in the mounting crises, they will be able to successfully overcome this challenge. If not, you may have written the next great tragedy. Congratulations! Someday people might be quoting lines from your story the same way they quote lines from Romeo and Juliet or breaking out into song as they're reliving the musical that was produced based on your book. Some of the best stories ever written end in tragic loss. Invest in some high-quality facial tissue. I recommend Kleenex Ultra Soft without lotion because you'll need to wipe the tears off your eyeglasses as well. The climax should start at approximately the 60 to 65% mark of the story and last through about 75% mark of the story. Notes about the romantic subplot. Remember that the climax is for the main story plot, not the romantic subplot. The romantic subplot may or may not ever have a climax, or any other plot point for that matter. It could just have flirty glances across the room at each other the entire story and them holding hands at the end. Or the romantic interest could fall off a cliff, leaving your hero devastated and unable to control their temper, which worsens all other conflicts. Hey, it could happen. Remember, we're writing the next great tragedy. Earthquake story. Main plot. The hero finds a handhold to pull himself and all the others up, but the water is still rising, and finally they're all on solid ground, exhausted but thankful to be alive. Romantic subplot. While they're lying on safe ground, glad to be alive, they share one long passionate kiss. Another aftershock causes the ground to fall out from underneath the love interest, and she tumbles to her death. The others on the hero's team hold him back from jumping in after her, saying there's nothing he can do to save her. They have to think about saving themselves. Yes, I did just kill off a main character. Remember, we're writing the next great tragedy here. Her dying is a definite setback to their potential romance, and that lends itself to a dark moment. But essentially, their love story is over. We have now wrapped up the romantic subplot. Notes about the romantic subplot? With the Fichtean curve, your main plot, and any subplots, may or may not have a happy ending. Think of Rose at the end of Titanic, saying goodbye to Jack as he sinks into the freezing water. Rose gets a somewhat happy ending. Jack dies. Oops, spoiler alert, my bad. Titanic is undoubtedly romantic, but the romance doesn't have a happy ending. Neither does Romeo and Juliet, or West Side Story, which is basically Romeo and Juliet with singing and dancing. Even though they all die in the end, we swoon as we read and watch them, right? The Fichtean curve plot structure offers a lot of freedom. Any of the above-mentioned stories could have ended with the love interests both alive and well. We wouldn't have cried as much, but just think we'd save on Kleenex. Beat 6. Falling Action. Part 3. This section ties up any loose ends, completes the character arcs of the hero and other main characters, and wraps up any subplots, including the romantic subplot. Although in our earthquake example, we wrapped up the romantic subplot in the previous scene. At the end of the falling action is the resolution, which shows the hero back in their ordinary world, for better or worse. This final scene should give the reader an idea what the hero has learned and in what way they have been transformed, or show the love of their life crying at their gravesite. Remember, I suggested the tissues without lotion. Falling action. Falling action starts at around the 75% mark and lasts through the end of the story. Earthquake story. Main plot. Seismologist is asked to give a full report to the university committee about what happened, why it happened, and how they can prevent future loss of life. The story ends with the hero receiving a phone call asking him to look over some numbers that are escalating on a fault line off the coast of Japan. He starts walking back toward his office, phone to his ear, leaving behind the battered city and coastline. Romantic subplot. There isn't time to grieve the love interest who has fallen to her death because the team still has to work together to get everyone else to safety. He later takes time to reflect and visits the love interest's hometown, meets her family and pets, and looks out over the calm ocean with longing and regret. Note: if you would like a complimentary printable copy of all the tables, outlines, and bonus materials mentioned in this book, please email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. That's julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. Chapter 8. Other Plot Structures. There are too many other plot structures to do a full write-up on each, but here is a short list of examples. Dan Harmon Story Circle. The Dan Harmon Story Circle structure is a simplified version of the hero's journey, but focuses more on character experiences and development. At the beginning of the story, the character is in his comfort zone, but wants something, and goes into an unfamiliar situation and must adapt to this new environment. Then he finds what he was looking for and has to pay the price for it and returns a changed man. Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling is an example of a book that could fit into the Dan Harmon story structure. When attempting to add a romantic subplot to a story plotted with the Dan Harmon story circle, follow the recommendations in Chapter 5, Hero's Journey Story Structure. 7-point plot structure. The 7-point plot structure is like an expanded version of the 3-act plot structure, but with more detail. In this structure, the main character's starting point is known as the hook, and introduces the story and the life in which the main character lives. At the plot point 1, some big or significant event occurs and kickstarts the main plot. Then the first pinch point happens when an antagonistic force starts a clash. The midpoint is when the main character stops watching what's going on and steps up and takes action. The second pinch point involves more conflict with the antagonist, and the character often hits rock bottom. All hope is lost. Then comes the second plot point, when the hero gets new information that helps them see the way out. The last part of this story structure is the resolution, when the climax occurs. Everything is resolved and the hero achieves his goal. After a good deal of research, experts seem to unanimously agree that Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope by George Lucas is a perfect example of a story created using the 7-point story structure. Can we all just agree that Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope is the greatest story ever written by a human? Congratulations, George. Did I ever tell you that I used to own all the Star Wars figurines when I was a kid? As for a romantic subplot, obviously Princess Leia is the love interest, and she gets thrown into a trash compactor along with a love triangle of men, a scruffy-looking nerf herder, and her twin brother. I mean, seriously, can we get any weirder than that? I'm not even going to try to make this into an earthquake story. You'll have to use your own imagination. When attempting to add a romantic subplot to a story plotted with the 7-point plot structure, follow the recommendations in Chapter 4, 3-act plot structure. Writing into the dark. Writing into the dark is essentially not outlining at all. Let the characters tell the story. This is a great method of structuring stories if you're a naturally good storyteller, even if you have no idea why you're including different story elements in a story. This is often referred to as discovery writing. The pitfall is trying to include all required genre expectations. This method works well for authors who thrive on creativity and want to see where things go without the limitations of a plot structure, or who want to borrow from multiple plot structures. Writing into the dark is also well suited for those who have been writing for a long time and can do an auto recall of the basic plot structures, or can plot unconsciously in their mind. Some people are just really good storytellers. For a lot of new authors, this is the first method used. You have a story in your head, and you just start writing. If you use this method and find that your story seems to lack something, you can research the different plot structures and figure out what you're missing. Note: if you would like a complimentary printable copy of all the tables, outlines, and bonus materials mentioned in this book, please email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. That's julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. Chapter 9. Closing Thoughts. There you go, my friends. I have presented an overwhelming amount of information and crammed it into a very short book. Good luck. Kidding. I'm here to help. If you'd like me to walk you through this, or any writing publishing challenges, I have author coaching available on my website, spencerpublishingllc.com. I hope you come away from this learning the difference between a romance and a story with a romantic subplot, as well as a basic understanding of the various kinds of romantic fiction. If you can remove the romance from a story and still have a main plot, then you don't have a romance. You have a story with a romantic subplot. In a romance, the people falling in love are the main plot, whereas in a story with a romantic subplot, the romance is a love story that coexists alongside the main plot. There is also a difference between an outline, a plot structure, a subplot, and a romantic subplot. Stories can have more than one plot line, but they only have one outline. Simple stories might have just one sequence of events, which can easily be plotted on a straight line. Other stories are more complex and might have several sequences of events happening simultaneously. Even though you're writing a romantic subplot, it's important to understand how to write a romance novel. This will help you include many of the same elements from a romance into a different story structure. You may even be able to create a multi-genre romance where the romantic plot is equal in hierarchy to whatever other plot is involved, and the story could fit into more than one genre. There are many plot structures that can be used to craft a story. And learning how to use them will help you decide which structure is best for the story you want to tell and what story to write based on the plot structure you're most comfortable with. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Keep in touch. Julie. Note: if you would like a complimentary printable copy of all the tables, outlines, and bonus materials mentioned in this book, please email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. That's julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. Chapter 10. Gracie. The newspaper never lies. "Did you figure out our chemistry homework this weekend?" Maddie asked, setting her stack of books on the desk beside mine. We were in homeroom first thing Monday morning. Some kids were frantically trying to finish incomplete assignments. She and I usually worked ahead so we didn't get overstressed from all our other activities. Tennis for me, music for her. I'd won the entire tennis tournament for first singles on Saturday. Kade and Taylor both came to support me, which was super nice. Yeah, Kade joined Tay and me for our weekend study session, so he helped me figure it out. I thought back to our discussion at their dining room table. Kade joining us added an interesting dynamic to our normal routine. Taylor and I had gotten relaxed together these past 2 years, and Kade shook us out of our comfort zone. "You and Kade have been spending a lot of time together." Maddie wiggled her eyebrows up and down. "Well, he is my best friend's cousin, and they live in the same house, and we are neighbors, and we have class together, so odds are we would spend a lot of time together." Why was I being so defensive? Why did I suddenly want to put the idea of Kade and me to rest? I don't know, girl. Was she baiting me? She was my best girlfriend, so she'd probably already figured out that I was secretly in love with Taylor but had never said anything. "I will not deny that he is good looking," I said. "I mean, have you seen him?" Maddie chuckled. "Oh, I've seen him all right." The provocative desire came through in her voice. "Yeah, I'm sure you have. You know, you've got natural talent just like him. Maybe you two should start an official rock band together. That'd be something. He seems to enjoy jamming with the guys, and me too. He is a whole new level of talent compared to the rest of the guys. What else do you know about him?" "He's a super nice guy," I said. "Like, under the bad boy wannabe rock star persona, he's almost as nice as Tay." Maddie raised his eyebrows in disbelief. "Only nice?" She closed her chemistry textbook and placed her elbow on it so she could rest her head in her hand as she stared me down. "There is more to him than that. Spill." "Okay, he is undoubtedly more flirtatious and forward than Tay, but they are both very smart and equally gorgeous." "You mean sexy," Maddie smirked and winked. I let out a sigh and stared at the ceiling. "Yes, I mean sexy. Maybe I should match up Maddie with Kade. Knowing Maddie the way I did, I was sure she could figure out how to snag Kade without my expert matchmaking skills. Maddie was absolutely stunning. With her dark skin and natural hair, she almost always wore subtle makeup, white gold hoop earrings, and sustainable clothing from her minimalist capsule wardrobe. They would undoubtedly look great together. She was the embodiment of authenticity, but she was also the embodiment of persistence, which means she was never going to drop this topic without serious convincing. The classroom door opened and a freshman on the school newspaper committee brought in a large stack of newspapers. I should have known there was trouble when I saw how nervous the freshman looked. He handed them to our homeroom teacher, Mr. Johnson, and hurried from the room. Mr. Johnson let out a long sigh and glanced up at me with deep, sympathetic eyes. What was going on? "All right, class, come and grab a paper off the desk if you want one, but please keep the noise down so others can continue working on their homework." After 30 years in the profession, Mr. Johnson had perfected his matter-of-fact tone. I didn't even get halfway to Mr. Johnson's desk before my ex-boyfriend Jimmy blurted out, "So much for being in love with Sir Tay Kendrick, Miss Perfect." I stopped in my tracks. In love? Miss Perfect? Was he still upset that I dumped him 2 years ago? One of my classmates, Marie, turned to me with a smirk. "Didn't take you long to latch onto the next hottie, now did it?" Marie asked. "What are you guys talking about?" A nervous panic came over me. This? Maddie handed me her copy of the paper, a bit of hurt in her voice. Front page of the paper, above the fold. Our newest couple, prom king and queen. Below were pictures of me and Kade. So many pictures. I unfolded the paper to see pictures of him leaning on the lockers beside mine as we gazed at each other. Photos of me holding his hand mere inches from his face as I spoke to him. Photos of him at my tennis tournament cheering me on. The worst photo of all was of him kissing my forehead during our intimate conversation on our date Friday night. I began reading the blatant lies about how Kade and I fell in love at first sight, that we had spent nearly every moment together from the time he arrived, and that our love was the kind that couples dreamed about. There was even a supposed quote from me saying, "I knew Kade was the one for me the moment I saw him. He is so much like my best friend Taylor, but there was something about Kade that made me fall in love with him." Another obviously falsified quote from Kade read, "Gracie is the most amazing girl, and I have to thank my cousin Taylor for introducing me to the love of my life." This isn't true, I panicked. How could they not see the misquotes from just the way neither of us would ever call Tay by his full name? "I don't know, Gracie. I do see you guys together a lot." Heidi from my tennis team raised her eyebrows. "He was at our tennis tournament this weekend." "Yeah, because Tay was there like he is at every tournament because he's my best friend." My voice cracked. "He does look a lot like Tay though, dude," Jimmy said. "I mean, you and Tay obviously friend-zoned each other a long time ago, or you'd be dating by now. He was the reason you and I broke up." "I broke up with you because you're a selfish jerk who never supported me in anything and because you tried to get me into the backseat of your car." My anger toward Jimmy compounded my embarrassment and frustration. "This paper is lying. I am not dating Kade, nor am I even interested in dating Kade, and Tay and I did not friend-zone each other." "You did just tell me you thought Kade was hot," Maddie reminded me. "Just like every other girl in the school would say. How could Maddie not be backing me up? She was one of my best friends." "All right, kids, settle down," Mr. Johnson called out in an attempt to regain control of the class. "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding, and you all need to get back to your desks." Nobody paid Mr. Johnson any attention, and the assault on my character and love life continued. "How poetic that Miss Goody Two-Shoes fell in love with a bad boy," Marie said. "And Kade is obviously interested in you." Heidi held up the paper to show me the front page as if I hadn't seen it. "I mean, these pictures don't lie." "They do lie." My voice cracked as I tried to hold back tears and keep my chin up. "You just don't want to admit that you're dating Kade," Jimmy continued his jabs. "How long did you think you could keep this a secret? Does Tay know about your little love affair? Or will this be a surprise to him too? Maybe we should text him to see how he's taking the news." "Shut up, Jimmy," I said through clenched teeth, tears welling up in my eyes. "Aw, come on, Gracie." Jimmy pointed at each picture. "Kade is literally kissing you in this picture, and you are the one holding his hand in this one. You walk to class together, hang out together every day, and obviously go on dates with each other. He even showed up to one of your dreadfully boring tennis matches." "We are friends, nothing else," I snapped back. "I've heard that one before," Jimmy said so intensely that I could feel his resentful scorn. "You want everyone to think you're so perfect, but underneath this facade, you are broken. Maybe that's why Tay never made a move on you, even after you broke up with me for him. You're too difficult to be with anyway, so hats off and good luck to Kade. He has no idea what he's gotten himself into with you." "Please stop," I begged almost inaudibly. "It's so obvious you're in love with Kade." Jimmy kept taunting me, pushing me to admit the truth he already knew. "Why do you keep denying it?" "Because I'm in love with Tay," I blurted and instantly covered my mouth with both of my hands as I realized I could never take it back. Everyone in the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on me. "Well, it's about time you admitted that." Jimmy smirked and put both hands behind his head, propping his feet on the desk in front of him. Hot tears fell uncontrollably down my cheeks as I ran out the classroom door. My feet carried me down the hall and I ran as fast as I could, needing to get out of the building, to go somewhere safe so Taylor and I could talk this through. If I knew my best friend, I was sure he would know where to find me. Chapter 11. Taylor. She loves you not. What the flipping nightmare is this? I held up the newspaper in shock. Right there in black and white on the front page was my brother and my best friend practically kissing and holding hands. How could he? He knows how I feel about her. Or does he? I've called her my best friend so many times it's as if I'm trying to convince myself. But is that the truth? No, she's way more than a best friend. Kade hurried around the corner into homeroom holding the newspaper. I took a step back. Don't you even have the nerve to talk to me. Tay, none of this is true, Kade said. You have to believe me. You have ruined my life over and over. I shouldn't be surprised that you would do this to me after you promised you would never ruin my life again. I don't know why I ever trusted you. Tay, that's harsh. You know darn well I never intended for her to fall in love with me. Heck, I know she's not in love with me because she's in love with you. She doesn't even like me that way, I insisted. And she's obviously in love with you. The pictures don't lie. See that picture right there? Kade pointed to the picture of him kissing Gracie's forehead. I wanted to puke. I had just told her that you were lucky to have her because I knew from talking to her and from being your brother that you were in love with each other. I hoped no one in my homeroom caught that he called himself my brother, but I was past caring. I may be in love with her, but I know she doesn't like me that way. Actually, she does. Dean, one of our friends in homeroom, held up his cell phone with an Instagram post about Gracie running from her homeroom, crying after admitting the reason that she wasn't in love with Kade was because she was in love with Tay. What? I grabbed his cell phone in disbelief. I thought she didn't like me that way. That is your own denial, my brother. There he goes again, calling himself my brother. That rumor was going to get back to Gracie too. Oh well. She loves you and you love her, and you guys need to just admit that to each other because you've admitted it to us and she's admitted it to her friends. It's time you two talk to one another. I don't even know where she is, I said, dejected. She ran away and who knows where she went. Well, you know her better than anybody else, Kade said. Where do you think she went? Immediately, I knew she went to our secret spot. I didn't even bother saying goodbye to my friends or explaining myself to our teacher. I grabbed my book bag and ran from the room. Chapter 12. Gracie, Our Little Secret. To the south of the baseball diamonds, there were several wooded acres. Taylor and I had wandered this way while trying to find an adventurous way home after a football game our junior year. Instead, we came across a weeping willow tree at the corner of the school's property where a fence blocked our progression. Neither of us were ready to go home for the night, so we built a little fort under that tree and we declared it our secret spot. Whenever we needed to get away from the world for a while, we came here. I ran the entire way to the woods, then plopped myself down at the base of our tree and sobbed into my knees. I didn't care that the ground was still wet with the morning's dew, nor that it would ruin my capri pants. Although I was missing French class, my teacher, Ms. Moreau, was extremely forgiving. I would probably be hiding in her classroom during lunch anyway, crying about this morning's drama. There was no way I could confront anyone before talking with Taylor about what happened. I heard twigs snap, and I peeked over my knees to see Taylor standing in front of me. I couldn't bring myself to look him in the eye. I didn't want to see the hurt that he must have felt after seeing those pictures of me with his cousin. He stood there for what seemed like an eternity, but was really only a few seconds, saying nothing while I cried. I'm sorry, Tay. I looked up at him with my tear-streaked face. Those pictures aren't real. I mean, they're real, but they were taken completely out of context. Hey now. Taylor crouched in front of me and placed a hand on top of mine where they clutched my knees tight to my chest. It's okay. How can you say that? I questioned as I glanced up at him. His cologne mixed with the fresh spring breeze comforted me, but I couldn't maintain eye contact, so I returned to burying my face in my knees and said in a muffled voice, Everyone thinks I'm in love with Kade, but I'm not. I'm pretty sure almost no one thinks you're in love with Kade, Taylor reassured me. It wouldn't be the first time something was wrong in the school paper, right? That was true, but it didn't change how I felt about the situation. Jimmy was a huge jerk and kept saying awful things about me. Jimmy's always been a jerk, Taylor said. That's one of the reasons I encouraged you to break up with him. One of the reasons? I asked sheepishly as I peered over my knees to see Taylor looking at me with soft intensity. Gracie, I haven't been honest with you, Taylor said softly. About what? I asked, no longer trying to hide my tears. Taylor reached out and wiped them away from my eyes. He took a deep breath and looked up to meet my gaze. About my feelings. I've been in love with you since we met. You have? Was I surprised? No, not really. Suspected? Yeah, probably. You're so unlike anyone I've ever met. Instead of wallowing in self-pity when your parents are fighting, you played tennis, Taylor continued. You're authentic and honest, and you don't try to hide anything about yourself. You're kind, brave, funny, beautiful. Now he was just making me self-conscious. I could never live up to his vision of perfection. With a furrowed brow, he took another deep breath and gently held both of my hands in his. Letting out a nervous chuckle accompanied by a crooked smile, he shyly continued. Gracie, you're everything I've ever wanted. You mean the world to me, more than you'll ever know. I love you. Taylor helped me up from the ground. Placing one hand on the small of my back, he pulled me close so our bodies were touching. With his other hand, he cradled my cheek and turned my face up to look him in the eye. His warmth drew me in closer as I instinctively wrapped my arms around his waist. My heart raced, and I got lost in his deep brown eyes. He pulled my face to his, and our lips met as the world stopped moving. Nothing in my life had ever felt this right. I clenched his jacket with my hands and pulled him closer to me, kissing him with the longing that I'd been suppressing for nearly 2 years. Everything in that single moment was perfect and how it should be. I loved Taylor Kendrick and had since meeting him on the tennis court 2 summers ago. As he pulled away, we were both breathing heavily, and he placed his forehead on mine. I kept my eyes closed, not wanting this moment to end. I love you too, Tay, I whispered, opening my eyes to see a smile on his face. I've dreamed of hearing you say those words, Taylor said. We pulled each other back in for another kiss, but not nearly as long this time. Ending the kiss with a sigh, we embraced one another, prolonging the moment now that we'd admitted the truth. I think it's time to head back, Taylor said softly. Already? I protested with a suggestive pout. Taylor tucked a lock of my hair behind my ear, and I leaned into his hand as he stroked my cheek with his thumb. I think we've already missed enough of our French class already. I sighed. You're probably right. At least Ms. Moreau is understanding. And I'm sure she would love to hear about your traumatic morning, Taylor said, knowing I frequently confided in Ms. Moreau. But maybe don't tell her we were making out in the woods, We don't want our parents to get a call from the school. He leaned down and placed one quick kiss on the tip of my nose. I won't kiss and tell. I bit my lower lip, already wanting to kiss him again. When Taylor released me from his embrace, I shivered in the cold morning air. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders, then wrapped his arm around my waist, guiding me in the direction of the school. As we left our secret place in the woods, I never wanted this feeling to go away. Everything was going to be different now. Taylor and I could be together as boyfriend and girlfriend. My Taylor. Chapter 13. Taylor, an escort to chemistry. We missed French class. Well, we missed the class part. I couldn't believe my luck. My heart raced as we walked into the school amid taunts from my friends. Not trying to hide my grin, I welcomed their catcalls and whistles as I, finally, walked my girlfriend to her locker. That was going to take some getting used to. My girlfriend. Gracie Hansen is my girlfriend. I wanted to shout it from the bleachers, but I really didn't need to shout because everyone could see my arm around Gracie, my girlfriend. My twin brother waited for us beside Gracie's locker with a smirk on his face. Looks like you no longer need me to walk you to class, Gracie. No, I think I can take it from here, Kade, I said with confidence. Very funny, you two. Gracie slipped from my arms to reach for her locker combination. I felt her absence and missed her warmth. Like a welcome security blanket, one of my hoodies was hanging in her locker, and I reached over her to grab it. "Do you want your jacket back?" she asked, the innocent apprehension in her expression begging me not to ask for the jacket. "Nah, you can wear it for the rest of the day." I slipped the hoodie over my head and relished the way her perfume clung to every fiber. She'd borrowed the sweatshirt a long time ago, and I decided I'd never wash it again. "So, does this mean I can't take you to prom next week?" Kade asked with a purposely innocent expression. "Don't go there, dude." "Mind if I ask Maddie to go with me?" Kade asked Gracie. "She's in my band class. Her voice is smoking hot." "Oh my gosh, she would love that!" Gracie bounced on her toes with excitement. "We can double date again." "Only if my boutonniere matches your corsage," I said. "I don't want anyone to question which one of us you're in love with this time." "Never again." Gracie leaned closer and lifted onto her toes to touch her lips to mine. "Black," Kade said with a gagging sound. "You can find your own escort to chemistry class. I'm out of here." He pushed away from the lockers and started down the hall. I ignored my brother for a few seconds as I got lost in Gracie's kiss, savoring the moment without pushing our luck. No need to get called out for public display of affection on our first day as an official couple. Pulling back just a little, I asked, "Could I walk you to chemistry class from now on?" "That would be awesome." As she stepped away from me, she ran right in to her old friend-turned-enemy, Laura Miller. Gracie didn't flinch away from the girl who had caused us so much trouble that morning. Instead, she got right in Laura's face. The sound that emerged from deep inside her was almost a growl. "How could you?" Chapter 14. Gracie. Confronting Laura. When Laura didn't answer me, I asked again, slower and with more anger. "How could you?" "I'm not sure what you mean," Laura said with a furrowed brow and pursed lips. "You know what I mean, Laura," I snapped with obvious aggression. "Why would you make up all those blatant lies and then put it on the front page of the school paper?" Laura shrugged and stuck her nose higher as she said, "What? I'm just an effective journalist." I didn't even try to hold back my anger. "You know darn well that that is not journalism. That is gossip column mediocrity. Now the entire school knows that you lied." "Do they, though?" Laura asked rhetorically. I looked around to see our classmates videoing us on their phones. Why is everyone so interested in my love life? "Yes, they do," Taylor said as he stepped next to me, putting his arm around my shoulders and pulling me close to himself. I relaxed a little, being in his arms and taking in his cologne, but my emotions were still burning with fire. "I'm not so sure everyone is convinced," Laura said snarkily. "I may have added a few extra juicy details for flair, but those pictures are very much real, and so is your relationship with Kade." "I am not in love with Kade," I said through clenched teeth. "Gracie, you've told me so many times that you weren't in love with Tay either," Laura said. She looked at him out of the corner of her eye with what looked like a loathsome glare. "Yet here you stand, so graciously wrapped around each other, like two lovesick puppies finally being honest for the first time in 2 years. Taylor flinched, and I could tell that Laura was starting to get to him. "Tay and I are honest with each other," I said. "We don't keep secrets from each other." "Like being in love with each other?" Laura asked. "If I could interject here," Taylor said, clearing his throat. "I think we both knew deep down we were in love with each other, but we didn't want to ruin our friendship. That wasn't being dishonest. More like in denial." "Oh, really, Tay? Do you really want to talk about being dishonest?" Laura smirked, her sarcasm implying she knew something else he was lying about. Up to this point, her journalism bunny trails had led toward catastrophe, so I decided to take it with a grain of salt because I didn't want to be anywhere near that drama bomb. Taylor shoved his free hand into his pocket and looked at his feet, showing that he was giving up this fight that really wasn't even worth having. But unlike my chivalrous boyfriend, I wasn't going down that easy. "Yes, Laura," I said, "he is always honest with me. Like, what is your problem? Why did you start hating me the second he showed up?" Laura looked me square in the eye and rhetorically asked in a shallow voice, "You really have no idea, do you?" She turned and started to walk away from me, but I followed her down the hall. I grabbed her shoulder and pulled her back around so we were standing face to face, our noses nearly touching. "No," I said, "you don't get to just walk away from me. We are having this conversation right here, right now." "You know what, Gracie?" Laura narrowed her eyes at me. "The world doesn't revolve around you. I don't have to do a thing you say because I'm not your little assistant just waiting at your beck and call." "You were never an assistant, Laura," I said with animosity. "Oh yeah? Who was the one who called when your parents were fighting?" Laura asked. "That isn't fair. That is just being a good friend," I said before Laura interjected and continued on. "Who was the one who crawled through your window at night when you needed a friend to talk to?" I stood there not knowing how to respond to the girl who used to be my best friend. Laura continued. "Who was the one who brought you your favorite snack every Friday for lunch since kindergarten? Who was the one who took you on every family 4th of July camping trip since 6th grade? Who was the one who came over when your dog of 10 years died? Who was the one who introduced you to your beloved tennis? Who was the one who bought you your first racket for your 12th birthday with all of her babysitting money? Who was the one who let you cry on their shoulder anytime any little tiny bad thing happened in your life? Who was the one, Gracie?" I continued to stand there and I wanted to say something, but I still couldn't find the words. "Because it sure wasn't him," Laura stated, pointing at Taylor, but still looking me square in the eyes. "And I am no longer your doormat." Without even giving me a second glance, Laura turned on her heels and walked away from me. I wanted to chase after her and tell her I'm sorry, but I didn't think it would do any good. I wanted to tell her that she meant so much more to me even now, but I knew it would fall on deaf ears. She had loved me like a sister once, and now she knew me as her enemy, and that stung. Taylor and I might be best friends now, but Laura and I went back to childhood best friends. We had been friends since we were 5 years old. A part of me will always be with Laura, and nobody was ever going to be able to change the time we spent together. Tears pricked my eyes as part of my heart began to grieve, perhaps for the first time, the friend that I once had, realizing that I will most likely never be able to have that friendship again. The day had been melancholy and bittersweet. On one hand, I was finally with the guy I had been in love with for 2 years, but on the other, I had been embarrassed beyond imagination and had gotten raked over the coals by my ex-best friend, and it was only Monday morning. Chapter 15. Madison Square Garden. Taylor. "I can't wait to see you in your prom dress," I texted my new girlfriend. That was still fun to say. Gracie and Maddie planned to come to our house when they were done primping. Kade and I were helping babysit our little sister until then. School gave us Friday off. They said that it was for a professional development day, but we really knew that it was for prom. Kade and I both had changed into our tuxes, minus the jackets, which we draped over the backs of chairs in the dining room. "See you in a couple of hours. I'm excited to see your tux," Gracie texted back with a winking emoji. I put the phone down, turned back to the Disney movie, and laughed for another 2 hours with my siblings. I was surprised the time had gone by so quickly when Gracie and Maddie walked in the back door. "Gracie!" Raina pushed herself off my lap and scrambled to get down from the couch. She raced across the room and jumped into Gracie's arms. Thankfully, her Elsa costume didn't rip with that jump either. To her credit, Gracie didn't flinch about Raina messing up her evening gown. "You look like a princess, Gracie!" Raina couldn't help herself from oohing and aahing, and I couldn't take my eyes off her either. "Thanks," Gracie said. "So do you," she tickled Raina. "Come watch Frozen with us." "How many times have you seen that movie?" Gracie asked, stepping around Clay, who was lying in the middle of the living room floor. She waved Maddie to follow her and sat beside me on the couch. Kade rose from his chair to welcome Maddie over to the other end of the sectional and sat beside her as they chatted about music and their makeshift band. "Wow, Gracie, you look amazing," I said, sneaking her a quick kiss when Raina had her head turned. We had spent nearly every second together since making our relationship official. Part of it was to avoid any rumor or drama that was circling from the paper fiasco on Monday. The other part was because I just couldn't keep my hands off her after waiting 2 long years. You don't look so bad yourself. Gracie tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear and lowered her eyes. I wished all these people weren't in here with us so I could pull her close. How are you? Good. Are you excited for our date? I wished we could leave now, but we were waiting for our mom to get home from visiting our dad. She would kill us if we left before she had a chance to take pictures of us in our dresses and tuxes. Where are you going on a date? Raina asked, turning to Gracie. We are going to prom, Gracie answered, pulling on Raina's ponytail. Can I come with you, please? Raina knew how to turn up the charm. Not this time. Gracie turned Raina around so she was facing forward. Do you want me to braid your hair? Good distraction. Yes! Raina climbed down and ran to the bathroom. She came back with her comb and detangling spray and stood in front of Gracie, leaning her head back and looking up at the ceiling. Dang, you have a lot of snarls. Didn't your mommy do your hair before bed last night? She's still gone visiting Daddy, Raina said, her eyes now focused on the television. Gracie looked over at me with raised eyebrows. I thought your parents were divorced. Oh boy, here we go. I've never actually said that. You just assumed. But you go and visit your dad's house only during school breaks. Aren't your parents separated? No, not officially. Why didn't you go with your mom to visit your dad? They are bunny rabbits, Raina said. None of my brothers want to be in the same wing of the house because they don't want to think about what Mommy and Daddy are doing. I don't know what that means. Maddie snickered and Gracie openly laughed. Kids say the darndest things, I said, chuckling along with the girls as if I wasn't dreading the rest of this conversation. She's just saying what the rest of us are thinking, Clay said, rolling onto his back and tucking his hands behind his head. No one seemed to be paying any attention to the Disney movie anymore. What did you mean by the same wing of the house? Maddie asked. Our big house has wings. Raina flapped her arms like a bird. Our little house doesn't have any wings. I held my breath, hoping Gracie didn't ask. She did. How many houses do you have? We have 3 houses, Raina said without turning from where Gracie was still combing through tangles. A big house, a little house, and a house near Grandma and Grandpa in England. We have to fly on an airplane to get to that house. Wait, this is your little house? Maddie asked, glancing up at the cathedral ceiling, the 72-inch television mounted on the wall, and the imported furniture. I have 2 bedrooms at my daddy's house. Raina turned around and held up 2 fingers. They call one of them my playroom because there are lots of toys. But I like Clay's playroom better because he has lots of video games and beanbags. I'm not allowed to go into Kade's playroom because there are too many guitars in there, and he has a whole drum set right in his playroom. It's not as big as Uncle Nathan's drum set, but that's downstairs in the studio. I'm not allowed to go down there without Daddy or Mommy. I held my head in my hands, gripping my hair. Well, I guess that cat's out of the bag, Kade snickered. Dude, this isn't funny. I lifted my head and glared across the room where my twin brother leaned back into the sofa beside his date. We only have 6 bedrooms in this house. Raina continued her speech that was destroying my perfect little world. And they're all crammed together on one floor. How many bedrooms are in your big house? Gracie asked through clenched teeth, glaring at me. I was in so much trouble. I don't know, a whole bunch of them, Raina shrugged. 15, Clay said without lifting his head. 15? Maddie's question was practically a squeal. How come you don't live in your big house? We came to live here after Grandma Kendrick had her heart attack. That was our standard answer as a family. Raina was repeating the narrative she'd been taught. Maybe Gracie would accept that and move on with our evening. If your mommy is visiting your daddy at his big house, why aren't you visiting also? Gracie was getting more out of this conversation with my little sister in 5 minutes than I'd told her in the 2 years I'd been her next-door neighbor and best friend. Might as well let this train wreck happen so we can finally get it over with. I knew what was coming next, and I cringed. Daddy's on tour, Raina said. They're at a hotel somewhere in New York City. They played in a garden last night. A garden? Maddie asked. Do you mean Central Park? No, it was a square garden, Raina said. Madison Square Garden? Gracie's jaw dropped, and I saw the moment she connected the last dots that had been right in front of her for so long she was probably embarrassed this had taken her so long to figure out. Your dad is Kai Burton. How did you know my daddy's name? Raina asked, turning around and looking at Gracie with big eyes. Gracie looked back and forth between me and Clay. Kade turned his head away, tracing the pattern on the arm of the sofa. Oh my gosh, you look just like him. I can't believe I never... Sorry, I whispered. Why haven't you ever told me who your father was? Gracie sounded as if she was going to cry. Wait, are you talking about Kai Burton, the lead guitarist of the rock band Buxton Peak? Maddie finally connected her own set of dots. Please understand our perspective here. I ignored Maddie and spoke directly to Gracie. We just want to lead a normal life without all the fame and stuff. By lying about who you were? Gracie asked. We didn't lie. We just didn't tell the whole truth. Same thing. Maybe you guys should talk about this another time, Clay said. He reached over to pick up Raina, who now had perfect little braids on either side of her head. How about if I feed Raina her bedtime snack and you four can head out on your date? Sounds like you have lots to talk about when little ears aren't around. Great idea. Gracie stood and folded her arms across her chest. We do have lots to talk about. All right, let's do this. Kade hopped up from the sofa, offered his hand to Maddie, and lifted her to stand beside him. He looked directly at me and said, The truth will finally set us free. The truth, I mumbled. Wait until she finds out the rest of the truth. I had an ominous feeling that this was going to be the worst night of my life. Chapter 16. Gracie. Now you know some of the truth. I cannot believe you lied to me, I grumbled, clicking my high-heeled shoes on the kitchen's expensive tile floor as I headed out to the car. What else are you lying about? A whole bunch of stuff, Kade said from behind us. Shut up, Kade, Taylor demanded, turning around and glaring at his cousin. A whole bunch of stuff, huh? I stopped near the doorway of the mudroom and glared at Taylor. Don't listen to him. Taylor put his arm around me and guided me out the door and toward his BMW. Let's just go to prom and have a good time, okay? Shouldn't we at least talk about your dad being Kai freaking Burton? I didn't even try to hide my frustration of him lying about his family for the past 2 years. Just as we were leaving the house, Taylor's mom's car pulled in the driveway and she hurried to exit her vehicle. Did I miss getting pictures? We're still here, Taylor grumbled, then asked me, Do you want to ask your mom to come out and get pictures too? Without answering him, I took out my phone, feeling silly for calling my mom from next door. Hey Mom, do you and Dad want to come out and get pictures before we leave for prom? Oh wait, I almost forgot. I'll be right back. Taylor left me standing there holding my phone and headed into the house. He came out with a small box tied with a gold bow. Looped through the ribbon was a rose charm for my bracelet. That's so we can remember our prom together. I pulled the ribbon away and opened the box to reveal an elegant corsage and matching boutonniere. They each had a single red rose accented by small blush pink budding peonies, all held together with black ribbon and sparkling crystals. These weren't the average corsage and boutonniere combo sold at the local flower shop. Oh, Tay, they're beautiful. Ooh, let me get pictures of you putting her corsage on, Taylor's mom said with excitement. May I? Taylor lifted the corsage from its box and slid it onto my wrist. The red and soft pink complemented my black satin dress. Taylor lifted my hand to his lips and kissed it. I love you, Gracie. I love you too, I said with a small smile, then lowered my brows. We still have a lot to talk about. Yeah, let's, talk in the car. Okay, now one of Gracie pinning your boutonniere on your lapel, his mom said. I lifted the boutonniere and carefully pinned it to his tailored black tux. We spent the next 10 minutes patiently moving throughout our 2 yards, allowing our parents to pose us in all the desired locations. On Taylor's front porch steps, on my back patio, near the flowering magnolia tree in Taylor's backyard. Throughout the whole ordeal, we all smiled fake smiles and pretended there wasn't this huge secret hanging over us. We'll meet you guys there, I said to Maddie, who took the hint that she and Kade should drive separately. Sure thing. Maddie nodded, then turned to Kade. This is your lucky night. You get to ride in my girl Ethel. My granddad restored this beauty when I was a little girl, and now it's all mine. Maddie pointed at her grandpa's 1966 black Mustang convertible. Whoa, Kade exclaimed. This baby is sweet. Kade jogged over to Maddie's car, inspecting it as if he knew something about cars. Maybe he did. Or maybe he was just admiring it. How would I know, since I'd been lied to already about how they related to a famous rock star? Ready to go? Taylor asked in a soft voice. Taylor opened the passenger door for me. His nervous stutter was understandable, considering how mad I was for him lying to me. I could see the remorse in his eyes. I knew he loved me, and I loved him too, but I was still mad that he lied. I climbed into the passenger seat as Taylor rounded the front of the car, climbed into the driver's side, and turned the key in the ignition. As we backed out of the driveway, he asked, So, what do you want to know? Well, first, why didn't you tell me who your dad was? I didn't want to be known as the son of a famous rock star. I didn't want to be known as someone who had a lot of money because of who his dad was. I wanted to be known just for being me. Okay, that's fair, I said. But why wouldn't you tell me after we had been friends for so long? I guess I just didn't want our friendship to change, and I was worried you would treat me differently if you knew who my dad was. Tay, you know me better than that. Yeah, that's true, Tay said. I guess another reason is because I've gotten used to it just being my mom and siblings, then you and the tennis team, and I just liked how life finally felt normal, you know? Well, I can't know for sure since I'm not related to an incredibly rich rock star, but I can kind of see where you're coming from. Now you know why I'm such a Buxton Peak fan. I laughed. Yeah, I was just rolling with your obsession because it made you happy. See, that is one of the many reasons I love you. I smiled, but then I remembered why I was still angry. Kade said there was a whole bunch of stuff you were lying about. What else? Taylor was silent for a moment, then sighed. A few years ago, Kade did some things to me and my family that were awful, to say the least, and I'm having a hard time forgiving him. I'm actually surprised he wants you to know about our argument. Well, maybe that's a sign that he's changed. Taylor grumbled. I'm not convinced he's changed. Has he given you any reason to suggest he hasn't? I asked. Taylor seemed to contemplate for a moment. No, but I still don't trust him. Well, it seems to me that you are the only one still hurting from all of that. Yeah, it seems that way, Taylor grumbled again. Why do you think that is? Because he has everyone wrapped around his little finger. Perhaps. Or maybe it's because he actually has changed, and everyone else sees that. But you're so caught up in how he wronged you that you won't even give him a chance to be forgiven and hear things from his perspective. You're probably right. Taylor let out a long sigh. I squeezed his hand to show that I was supporting him. We arrived at the event center and Taylor put the car in park. We both sat there, not moving. I wasn't quite done with this conversation, and Taylor seemed to respect that. Can you promise me 2 things? I asked, breaking the silence. Definitely. Taylor nodded and looked over at me. 1, can you try to be friends with your cousin again? I asked. From what he's told me, you guys used to be really close. I think he misses you a lot. Taylor raised his eyebrows, then cleared his throat. I'll try. What's the second thing? I want you to promise that you won't lie to me again. About anything. We need to be honest with each other if we want this relationship to work. Which I do. I wouldn't want to be dating a liar, let alone be friends with one. Gracie, I do want our relationship to work, but there are things I've been hiding from you for years, and I'm sorry. Taylor gulped and took a deep breath. I promise not to lie to you again, but promise that you'll forgive me as you learn about my past. Of course I'll forgive you. I leaned over the center console and he met me halfway for a sweet kiss. At least it started that way. Taylor wrapped his hand around the nape of my neck, low enough that I wasn't worried about my updo. He didn't seem to be holding back his passion. I gripped my hands into his hair, pulling him closer. We were interrupted by a knock on our windows and pulled away from each other to find Kade and Maddie standing outside the car. Are you lovebirds ready to go? Kade asked with a smirk. Not really, Taylor grumbled as he climbed out of the car. He shut the door and pulled Kade aside. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I hoped Taylor was offering Kade forgiveness and renewed friendship. Maddie stepped aside and I opened my door. You okay, girl? She draped her arm through mine as we walked into the event center, our dates trailing behind us, still deep in conversation. I wanted to let them have this moment and turned my attention to Maddie. Yeah, I'm good. How was your ride over here? It was fantastic. Maddie didn't even try to contain her excitement. Did you know that Kade has been learning to play the guitar since he was 6 years old? His dad wanted to be sure he was a great player, and it came as no surprise that he was naturally talented at it. Really? I asked. I didn't know he started playing that young. I've heard him play, and he's definitely talented. I was still a little off emotionally since finding out Taylor had lied to me. I forgave him, but it didn't change the fact that it hurt. Hopefully, a prom full of fun, food, and dancing would be just the thing to take my mind off the drama and enjoy time with my best friend, who also happened to now be my boyfriend. As Taylor and Kade hurried around us to open the doors, I decided to make this the best night of our lives. Chapter 17. Taylor. Twins. Oh, aren't you guys cute with your matching corsage and boutonniere? Laura Miller said, stalking toward us in the foyer of the event center where prom was barely underway. I instinctively took a step between my date and this former friend who seemed to have a bone to pick with Gracie. I would have thought the identical twins would want to wear something that matched. We are not identical twins, Kade told Laura. We're fraternal twins. Shut up, Kade, I demanded, already knowing it was too late. What, don't you think it's time Gracie learned the truth? She knows about Dad. Time to tell her about us. What are you guys talking about? Gracie asked. Oh, come on, Gracie. Kade turned to her. You nailed it the first time you saw us standing next to each other. I don't know why Tay thought he could pass me off as his cousin. We may be fraternal twins, but we look identical. Admit it. Oh my gosh. Gracie looked back and forth between us. You do look identical. Well, we're not. I glared at Kade. I'm nothing like him. We have zero in common. Other than our birth dates and our love for Buxton Peak, Kade said, not backing down. I still can't believe she didn't figure it out the night of our first date at the mini golf putting thing. You were lying to me this whole time? Gracie was no longer focused on Kade. She had narrowed eyes shooting proverbial daggers at me. You purposely made up a story telling everyone he was your cousin? Why? Because I didn't want him ruining my life again. I tried to justify my reason. Oh, grow up, Tay, Kade said. You don't even know the full story of what I did. And you, Gracie turned on Kade. You went along with Tay's scheme and you even pretended you liked me. I did like you, Kade said. I do like you. You're a great person. Yeah, I'm such a good person that you thought it was okay to lie to me. Gracie ripped the corsage off her wrist and whipped it in our direction. Kade caught the corsage and handed it to me. I wish you had never come here, Kade. What Tay and I had was perfect, and now it's like the Tay I thought I knew is gone. Kade was silent. He looked down at his feet, and Maddie wrapped her arm around his waist. Gracie turned on me again. You said you loved me and that you would never lie to me. You promised me a few minutes ago you would never lie to me again. I haven't lied to you again, I defended. And you promised that you would forgive me as you learn about my past. I gave you the chance to tell me everything. How could you still not trust me enough to tell me the truth? I reached out to her, trying to hold on to the small thread of hope that she would hear my reasoning. Gracie, please. She stepped back, holding out her hand so that I couldn't get close enough to touch her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You lied to me. She looked back and forth between me and Kade. Well, to be fair, Kade said, I was just doing as I was asked. His argument was not helping my defense. Gracie glared at me. So you told him to lie to me. Gracie, it isn't like that, I said. It's exactly like that, Tay, Gracie said. I cannot believe it took me this long to see it. I'm such a fool. She turned on her heels, beelining toward the ladies' room, the one place I couldn't follow her. Why did you do that? I took a step toward Laura, My fist balled at my side. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Scrappy," Kade said. "As your one and only twin brother, it is my responsibility to keep you from going to jail for hitting a girl at prom." "Gracie deserved to know the truth about you," Laura said with a smirk. "She deserved to know what kind of guy she abandoned me for." "Abandoned you?" Maddie asked. "You're the one who quit the tennis team and stopped answering her calls. You're the one who abandoned her." "She abandoned me long before I quit," Laura said. "She abandoned me the minute Tay moved into our neighborhood. She immediately started calling him her best friend, as if she didn't already have a best friend." "Gracie has lots of best friends," Maddie said, "and she never understood why you no longer wanted to be one of them." "Well, maybe I should go talk to her." Laura backed away from us, since her boyfriend is not allowed in the ladies' room. Laura turned on her strappy high-heeled shoes. Her violet prom dress swished as she walked away. Chapter 18. Gracie. You deserve the truth. The ladies' room in the event center had a nice powder area, and I plopped myself on the striped couch directly across from the massive wall-to-wall mirror. I didn't want to cry and mess up my makeup. Maddie had worked on my face for over an hour. I grabbed a tissue from the end table next to me to pat my eyes. Taylor and Kade were twins. It was undeniable. As the dots connected in front of me, disbelief clouded my thoughts. How could I not have seen this before? I didn't understand why Taylor would lie to me. I gave him the opportunity not 10 minutes prior to tell me the complete truth, but he still chose to withhold information from me. The mirror stared back. I was pathetic. Sitting here in my black satin gown, glitzy jewelry, and red eyes from the tears fighting to fall down my cheeks. I fought back and dabbed at my eyes again. "Really, Gracie?" I grumbled at my reflection. "Were you really this blind to Tay's lies? Son of a rock star, probably a millionaire, twin to someone who didn't exist until 2 weeks ago? You're pathetic." "Maybe a little," Laura said, standing by the door to the ladies' room. When did she come in? How much had she heard of my ramblings? Great. "Don't you have someone else to patronize?" I asked, rolling my eyes and looking back toward my reflection. "You know you deserve better than that, right, Gracie?" Laura said in a kind voice. I glanced over at her, perplexed. Why was she being nice to me? Everything was perfect before Kade got here. There, I'd said it out loud. Granted, I said it to the girl who used to be my best friend, but whatever. I mean, yeah, I was hiding my feelings from Tay, but people were nice to me, and I certainly had a lot less drama. "Gracie, you've always had drama," Laura said, clicking her tongue and laughing softly. There she goes, patronizing me again. I half wondered if she was going to pat me on the head as she walked past and sat next to me on the sofa. I furrowed my eyebrows and turned to face her. "What do you mean by that?" Laura folded her hands and placed them on her violet satin gown. "Oh, come on, Gracie. You used to call me almost every night with the same whining. 'My parents are fighting. I don't know if I'm good enough for tennis. So-and-so doesn't like me.' It was exhausting, to say the least." I was offended, but had to admit she was right. I hadn't meant to be whiny and needy. "I guess it makes sense why you didn't want to be my friend anymore." "Yeah, that would make sense." Laura glanced down at her perfectly manicured hands and she took another deep breath. "But that wasn't why I stopped being your friend." Her words were so quiet I wasn't sure if she'd meant to say them out loud. I heard it, though, and I couldn't ignore it. "So why did you stop being my friend?" Laura closed her eyes and her leg bounced as it did when she was nervous. "It's okay, Laura," I encouraged. "I won't be mad. I want to know so I can make it right. You deserve that." Laura turned to look at me. "I couldn't be your friend anymore after I saw you with Tay," she said. "It was like he replaced me, and that hurt, especially after we had been friends for so long." I could tell that whatever she was about to say was the real reason she was no longer my friend. I held my breath, suspecting I already knew the truth. "Haven't you done enough damage?" Maddie said from the doorway, interrupting the first time Laura and I had talked in several years. Laura stood and took a step back, that same mask of anger once again on her face. "Maddie, it's okay," I started to say. "No, it's fine." Laura said to me. You hang out with your other best friend, and I'll talk to you another time. Laura gave Maddie a wide berth as she skirted around Maddie to get to the door, and then she was gone, taking with her the real reason why she stopped being my friend. Chapter 19. The Whole Truth. Taylor. You purposely told Gracie about us being twins after I specifically forbid you from doing that. I glared at my brother, my fisted hands twitching to show him just how angry I was. How long were you planning to keep that up? Kade stepped right up into my face, almost begging me to throw the first punch. You were just prolonging the inevitable. The longer that lie went on, the worse the ramifications. I wanted to keep it up through graduation and then move away from you for good so you couldn't ruin my life again, although I'm sure you would have found a way. You're such a jerk, Tay. Kade pointed in my face. I don't know why I even try with you. Twin brothers or not, I'm done trying to be perfect for you. You can't see my side of anything. You made me lie for you. You don't trust me that I can stay clean. This isn't about the drugs, I said, aware that we'd drawn a captive audience in the foyer outside the ballroom. Prom was happening without us. I can't forgive you for what you did. What did he do? Gracie asked from behind me. I spun around to find my angry girlfriend, and Maddie had snuck up behind me while I was yelling at my brother. Shall I list all the reasons he went to juvie? I asked with disdain. Using drugs, dealing drugs, theft, breaking and entering. Am I missing anything, Kade? I have been sober for 2 years, and I've done my time for everything else, Kade said. You've only been sober because you were locked up. Admit it. I sneered at Kade. And you deserve a lot more time for what you did. You don't even know what I did, Kade shouted in my face. I took the fall for everyone else that night. The only reason I went back into the house was to return your PRS. What? I glared at my brother. You were stealing my guitar. You were caught with it in your arms. Because I was returning it. No, you were stealing that with everything else you tried stealing. And because of that choice, we had to uproot everything and come here, missing the life we'd built in Nashville. Tay, Kade said, I'm sorry you were forced to move away, but that was Mom's choice, and it was a long time coming. As for the guitar, my friends were the ones trying to steal it. I was just barely sober enough to know not to let them get away with your guitar. Why didn't you ever tell me that? I took a step back, feeling as if someone had shoved me in the chest. Would you have even listened? I was so flippin' stoned I didn't know what I was saying to anyone. I was trying to explain, but nothing was coming out right. They had to take me to detox before they could take me to jail. It was not a fun night for me. Well, you shouldn't have been doing drugs. I was still angry even after everything he'd confessed. I know that now, Kade said, and I never will again. I promise. If Andy can stay sober after all these years, I know I can. Who's Andy? Maddie asked, stepping up beside Kade and sneaking her hand into his, probably to show solidarity and to help defuse the situation. Andy Smith, I answered, bassist for Buxton Peak. He visited me every single month the whole time I was locked up, which was a heck of a lot more than you visited. Why'd he visit you so much? Gracie asked, compassion in her voice. I wanted her to comfort me the way Maddie was comforting my brother. He hadn't lied to his date, though. He's my sponsor, my accountability partner. Andy knows what it's like to fight an addiction to drugs. Kade's voice lowered to a near whisper. He doesn't want what happened to Gary to happen to me. Gracie reached over and held Kade's other hand. That's not going to happen to you. My jealousy flared even though I knew she was just being nice. Who's Gary? Maddie asked. And what happened to him? He couldn't stay sober, Kade said. He wrapped his Bentley around a tree and... Kade didn't need to finish the sentence for the rest of us to know what happened. Gary was the original drummer for Buxton Peak, I said. If you listen to their earlier albums, that's who you'll hear. He was probably one of the most talented drummers ever. Drugs destroyed his life. Speaking of talent, Maddie sidled up next to Kade, who wrapped his arm around her shoulder. Now I understand how you got so talented. Makes perfect sense now that I know you're Kai Burton's son. What was that like, growing up with a famous dad? It sucks, Kade and I said at the same time. Everyone knows your business, Kade said. Everyone expects something from you. People want to be friends with you just because your dad's famous, I said. Girls only flirt with you because your dad's a rock star. Gracie released Kade's hand and stepped closer to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I'm glad I didn't know your dad was famous. I don't want you ever questioning why I love you. I tucked her into my arms and kissed the top of her head, just as Kade released Maddie from his arms and reached out to shake mine. Will you please forgive me now that you know the truth? The hurt in my brother's eyes conveyed his remorse. I never should have gotten involved with drugs, and I never should have stolen anything, and I never should have ruined your life by giving Mom one more reason to leave Nashville. I looked down at his outstretched hand, considered clasping it and offering forgiveness. Instead, I stepped away from Gracie and pulled my twin into my arms. The comfort that flowed through me was like draping a blanket around my shoulders and wrapping us together. Ours was a bond stronger than any others in our lives. I forgive you, Kade. And I love you, more than you can possibly imagine. I love you too, my brother, Kade said, pulling me just a little tighter. And I've missed you. Since we're all confessing our love for each other, Laura Miller stepped up to our group, her satin prom dress crinkled from her hands gripping the skirt. The reason I've been so angry the past 2 years since Tay moved in and took you away from me was because I'm in love with you. Laura wasn't talking to me. Her gaze was locked with Gracie's. Chapter 20. And Nothing But the Truth. Gracie. What? I stepped closer to my former best friend. Gracie, I've known I liked girls since middle school, but I never told you because I didn't want to ruin our friendship or the way you thought of me. I always kind of hoped you would someday love me too. So when I saw you with Tay, it kind of broke my heart, especially because I could see a connection between the two of you that you never had with Jimmy. I was stunned. I had suspected she liked girls, but I was surprised to find out that she had loved me as more than a friend. I grabbed her hand tightly in mine. Laura, I would never think of you any differently, regardless of who you love. That's your choice, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about it. Laura smiled softly, and tears fell from each of her sad eyes. Thank you, she said under her breath. I'm sorry that I didn't reach out when our friendship broke to see what was wrong, I said. You're right. I was caught up in everything about Tay, and that wasn't fair to you after you had been my friend for so many years. I don't know how our friendship would have changed if you'd told me how you really felt about me. Yeah, I wasn't sure either, which is why I was scared to tell you, Laura said. I didn't want to lose you as a friend. Well, I'm willing to give our friendship another try if you are, I said, as long as you promise to go back to being the nice Laura I once knew. No more lies in the school paper. Do real journalism, not magazine gossip column garbage. Laura laughed softly and shook her head. No more lies. She glanced around the group of our friends. From any of us. I pulled Laura into a long embrace, glad to have my friend back. But there was one more thing I needed to make clear. I pulled back so we were at arm's length. I love you too, like a sister. Can you be okay with that? Yeah, I can be okay with that. She nodded and we pulled each other into another hug. Who knows, maybe I can match you up with the right hottie, I said with a wink. No more matchmaking, Taylor exclaimed, and we all laughed. Chapter 21. Allow me to introduce myself. Taylor. Hey, Gracie and Laura. I hated to break up the moment, but I needed to do one more thing to make all this right. I turned to Maddie to include her as well. I want to introduce myself since, I'm your next-door neighbor. My name's Taylor Burton, but everyone calls me Tay. I pulled Kade closer to me and continued my reintroduction. This is my twin brother, Kade, who I haven't seen in 2 years because he was healing from some past mistakes. Our dad is Kai Burton, the guitarist for the rock band Buxton Peak. We moved here to get a fresh start, and I would love it if you could be a part of it. Gracie smiled and stepped forward, putting her hand in mine to return the handshake. It's nice to meet you, Tay. I'm Gracie Hansen, and these are my 2 best friends, Laura and Maddie. I'm glad you moved in next door and happy to be a part of your fresh start. I reached out to Maddie. I heard you have a beautiful singing voice. You and my brother Kade would probably get along great. He's a pretty talented musician." Maddie shook my hand with a giggle and tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, locking eyes with Kade. "I'm excited to get to know you better, Kade." "I'm excited to get to know you as well, Maddie," Kade said, taking the hand she'd just released from mine. "You know, a slow song just started in the ballroom. Would you dance with me?" "I would love to dance with you," Maddie said flirtatiously, and they walked away together, swallowed in the sea of high school kids on the dance floor. I stepped over to Laura and reached out to her as well. "I heard you're kind of like a sister to Gracie." "Any sister of Gracie's is a sister of mine." "I'm sorry I've been a jerk the past few years," Laura said. "And I'm sorry I printed mean things in the newspaper." "All is forgiven." We shook, and then I turned to Gracie. "You know, I've had my eye on you all night, and I hoped I could ask you to dance." "I'd love to dance with you, Tay Burton." Gracie smiled slightly and shook her head. "That's going to take some getting used to." "Guess we're going to have to spend lots of time together so you can get used to it." "Tay, can I interrupt for a second?" Laura asked. "Could you maybe introduce me to your dad's band sometime? I'm kind of a huge fan." "I'll do even better than that," I said. "Next time they have a concert within a 100-mile radius, I'll get us all tickets and backstage passes." "Thank you so much," Laura said with a huge grin. "You two have fun on the dance floor." She started to back away, but Gracie pulled her in for one more hug. As we headed over to the dance floor, Gracie called over her shoulder, "You're coming to my tennis match tomorrow, right?" "Wouldn't miss it," Laura called back. What had started as the worst night of my life ended with Gracie in my arms on the dance floor, her hands around my shoulders, her wrist corsage resting near my boutonniere. "We match," I said. "We're a perfect match," Gracie said. Then she lifted onto her toes, and her lips met mine in a perfect kiss. Epilogue. Planning for the future. Kade. Maddie and I technically slept together on prom night. Before I brag too much, I should clarify that we were still fully dressed and lying on a grassy knoll near the point of Liberty Park, watching the moon set over the Cumberland River. My tux was covered in grass. Maddie's prom dress was crinkled and there were ants in her wrist corsage. Thankfully, our parents thought we were at the after-prom lock-in, so none of them knew. Not surprising, Gracie called us out when we arrived. "You two look like you didn't sleep at all." There was a teasing glint in her eyes. No doubt Taylor had already ratted us out. Not that I cared. Prom was lame. Maddie had her own car, so we ducked out halfway through the evening and drove down to the park. We sat and talked, digging our feet into the thick grass, lying on the bank of the river, gazing at the moon and the stars, listening to the water flow past. Yeah, it wasn't surprising Maddie and I fell asleep. I was really starting to like her. I reached over and wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her close to me. "Who can sleep when you have this beauty lying next to you?" Maddie giggled and winked at me before turning to Gracie. "We can sleep when we're dead. We weren't going to miss your tennis match against our rivals." Gracie flashed a huge smile, glancing around our group. Taylor, me and Maddie, and Laura, her former best friend. As of last night, her former friend turned enemy turned friend again. I couldn't keep track. Gracie was probably still on a high from everyone making up. "How did I get so lucky to have such amazing friends?" Gracie asked. Taylor wrapped his arm around Gracie's shoulders. "Just don't forget, you and I have officially moved out of the friend zone." "Gag me," I said, rolling my eyes. I was stoked to have my brother back to treating me like his twin, but I don't do mushy. Taylor had always been the more romantic one of us. I had to admit, he and Gracie were kind of cute as lovesick puppies. Never for me. That wasn't my style. "I'm excited for your tournament, Gracie," Laura said with an encouraging smile. "I wish you were out there playing with me," Gracie pouted. "Nah, I'm heading up to Central Michigan University in the fall to focus on photojournalism. They have one of the best programs in the world. Tennis was a hobby for me. That's your thing." "Hey, our Aunt Megan graduated from that college." College. I didn't even really think about how college was supposed to start in just a few months. I never thought about going to college. I didn't see a point when I wanted to pursue music anyway. I wondered if Maddie knew where she was going. "Tay and I are going to Stanford," Gracie said. "I'm signing my national letter of intent on Monday to play tennis there. I'm planning to major in engineering." And I'm going to major in environmental science. Taylor puffed up his chest as if that was something to brag about. What a dork I had for a twin brother. He could be an environmental scientist. I was going to be a rock star like our dad. Well, it sounds like you three have it all figured out, Maddie said, slumping her shoulders. I wonder what she had figured out. Gracie turned to her coach, who was waving her over. Oh, I've got to go. Wish me luck. Good luck, we said in unison, then walked over to the bleachers and sat together to watch Gracie play. Within a few minutes of the tournament starting, Gracie was in control. She ran all over the court, smacking the ball with force. I hope I never get on Gracie's bad side, I said to Maddie, who sat by my side, because I wouldn't want to be the ball to her racket. Right? She's so talented. Maddie didn't take her eyes off her best friend. I wanted to ask Maddie about her plans for the future because I kind of like the idea of having her around. Knowing I was planning to head back to Nashville eventually made me nervous. I nudged her shoulder. So, do you know what you're going this fall? Maddie wrinkled her nose and shook her head. She turned to me and said, I want to pursue a music career, but I don't even know how to get started. Well, why don't you come to Nashville with me? You could meet my dad's band and maybe they could connect us with the right people so we could work on music together. Maddie bit her lower lip and creased her brow, cringing with apprehension. I don't want you to think the only reason I'm hanging out with you is because your dad's a rock star. I grabbed her hand and waited until she met my gaze. Maddie, I've been around girls like that. Believe me, you are nothing like them. Maddie sighed and put her head on my shoulder. I wrapped my arm around her waist and held her tight. Where would we even stay? Maddie asked. You could stay at my dad's place with me. It's plenty big enough. There's an amazing pool, multiple wings and stories, and a recording studio where we can work on music together. I don't know, Kade, Maddie said. We barely just met. Maddie, I've done crazier things with people I've known for a shorter amount of time than you. That's reassuring, Maddie said sarcastically with a knowing smile. Okay, that's not what I meant, I said quickly. It isn't like I'm asking you to move in with me or anything. The house is enormous. There's even a guest house that you could stay in if that would make you feel better. Maddie nodded as if thinking through all the possibilities. I wasn't just asking her to move an hour away. I was asking her to move into my rock star father's millionaire lifestyle. That's a lot for most people to take in. You don't think your parents would mind? Maddie asked hesitantly. Nah, my mom already knows you through Tay and Gracie. And my dad's cool, as long as I stay sober. Maddie closed her eyes and let out a deep breath, then sat up and looked at me. Yes, I'll go. Let's do this. Awesome, I called out a little too loudly in celebration just as Gracie missed a ball and lost a point. I couldn't contain my smile even as Taylor turned around and punched me in the leg. Quiet, moron. This is a tennis match, Taylor growled under his breath. Sorry, Maddie and I said together sheepishly. We turned to look into each other's eyes, and I realized I was starting to fall hard for this girl. Every minute drew me closer to her, and I didn't want to lose her. Being together in Nashville, doing what we both love, was a sure way to make her mine. I raised my eyebrows seductively. This is going to be awesome. I promise. Thanks for listening to Matching You with Love. Written by Julie L. Spencer and co-writer Audie Lynn Anderson. Narrated by Julie L. Spencer. Copyright 2021 by Spencer Publishing LLC. Production copyright 2023.